Hi, thanks for joining us for this episode of Doug Has Questions. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please like, subscribe. We're available if you want to watch us on YouTube, or if you just want to listen to the podcast version on Apple Podcast and Spotify. And each episode goes live on Thursday morning. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and we're happy to have you listening. Hi, this is Doug, and welcome to this episode of Doug Has Questions. Today, my guest is Cesre McQuaid, licensed counselor. Mm-hmm. I'll let you explain all your different, because you've got a lot of letters after your name. I'll let you talk about what each one of those is.
Okay.
But she's the owner of Southeast Alaska Professional Counselors Associates.
Yep.
Did I get that right?
You did.
All right.
Yeah.
So what do all the letters behind your name stand for?
They all, I should have just went and got a doctorate, but, so the licensed professional counselor, I'm also licensed in North Carolina too. So North Carolina has a different version, licensed clinical mental health, and so provider. So that's why there's some difference, in those two types of initials behind my name. So, but they all translate to a master's level therapist.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you specialize in trauma, PTSD, grief, and then also relationship issues, correct?
Yep.
And I think you and I talked about before we came on here, this is not a counseling session.
Right.
This is not professional advice to anybody that's watching, that if they do feel like they need counseling, reach out. I think your calendar is booked right now, but there's a lot of professionals such as yourself out there, whatever part of the country is. Please reach out to one of them, have your own counseling session with them so they can treat you one-on-one. We're just doing like an overview on things that, because I've known you for several years, but I got to know you as a counselor during the Landslide event in 2020.
Right.
And so we'll touch on that later, but that's kind of why I want to talk about the trauma, the grief aspect that you specialize in and your role in that during that time period.
Okay.
But before we get to there,
Okay.
you grew up in Michigan. Correct?
I did. Well, my father worked for Halliburton, so he was an engineer for Halliburton, and so and he's from Kansas, and so we always had a farm. We still do a ranch in Kansas, and so I was born in California. That's where my mom's from. My parents met when my dad was in the Navy, actually, so met in California. But when I was 2, I have 3 older sisters, so they're all quite a bit older than me. They're 16, 17, and 11 years older than me. So
you're the baby.
I'm the bonus.
You're the bonus.
I'm the bonus, yes.
Yeah.
And if you've heard me talk about how I got my name, that's, It was teenagers in the 70s. They all wanted a baby brother, and, they got a sister. And so my name is completely made up. And it's, it's from my older sisters are Debbie, Elaine, and Cindy. So
Okay.
they got to make my name up in the 70s.
So your sister's made up your name
Yes.
for you.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
So I was a bonus. But yes, so I was, so actually only one of my sisters really, both of my 2 oldest sisters were pretty much out of the house. I have a niece who is just a couple years younger than me. So, but we always, with my husband or with my father's job, we moved quite a bit when I was younger. So I lived in Ohio for a year. I lived in Indiana, Pennsylvania for a year. We oftentimes went in the summers back to Kansas, though, because they always had the ranch. And so my uncle would take care of that when we were gone. But
So what age were you when you moved to Michigan then?
I was in the 3rd grade.
3rd grade.
Yep. I was
And
in
then
the
from
3rd grade.
3rd grade through high school,
3rd
it was
grade, yes.
all the way
Yep.
in Michigan. The
All the way in
travel had
Michigan.
stopped at that point.
Yes. Well, they still traveled. So they went and actually, when I was 15, almost 16, they went to Egypt. So they were in Cairo, and they were also in a place right above
You didn't want to go. You
Alexandria.
didn't want to go to Egypt.
I did actually.
You
I
did
went
get over there?
Yeah, I did.
I was gonna say, that would have been-
Yep.
I'm hoping you didn't like. No, I'll stay
Yeah.
in Michigan. I don't want to go to Egypt.
Well, by that time, I was, I had already met Eddie, my husband.
Yeah.
So certainly didn't want to leave friends. I went to a small private Catholic school, and so I had a pretty good, solid, friend and community connections. And my sister also, Cynthia, who's 11 years older than me, she was in college at the time. So it made sense for us to stay. And then I would go back and forth. So I would still go and visit them and things like that. It was pretty exciting.
So how old were you when you were visiting Egypt?
I was 16 when I first
16
got on
when
it.
you-
Yep, all by myself. The first time I'd ever traveled alone, and I traveled on an international flight. I got to see I stopped over in Heathrow and then in Rome, and I got to see my first actual fist fight in LaGuardia Airport. So it was quite traumatic. I think I fell asleep afterwards. How dangerous, right? So long layovers. So, but yeah, no, I went to, I visited them often when they were there. So yeah, on breaks.
What was that like? What was your impression of Egypt?
Oh, wow. It was over 30 years ago, of course. So it was it's probably very different now. But it was amazing. It was amazing to travel and to go and
you had the pyramids.
Yep. Right there. And
that whole area is just so rich in history. Yeah. I mean, it goes back to the founding of civilization. And I'm jealous.
One of the things that was amazing is so they have the Cairo Museum, and there's like all the King Tut, all of that stuff, right? Is that tours usually.
Yeah.
When it's there, it's in the Cairo Museum. And when you go and you visit the Cairo Museum, there's armed guards everywhere. But at that time, it was like the cases were just these regular cases with like these diary locks on them. So you're walking in, wait a minute, that seems so, it seems not very guarded. But
in the late 70s, when that was in Seattle, the first time the King Tut exhibit, my mom had a show down at Aptex for fabrics, and Sarah and I went with her. And we went to see the King Tut exhibit. Yeah. That was so wild.
It is.
That was, I mean, just the artwork and the craftsmanship.
It's
and
amazing.
The detail and everything. Plus, I mean, a lot of gold.
Yes.
But that was phenomenal. Yeah. Just looking at that. I think I was in third grade or something when we did that, and it was, amazing.
It's special. You can feel the history. Like you can feel the timeline of the human race, when you're in some of these places. And when we would travel up, it was we would go to a place above Alexandria. It was called, probably I'm pronouncing this wrong, but it was called Masamatru. It was a small little area that was on the Red Sea. And when we would travel through there, we would travel kind of like in a caravan, and you'd be going through the desert, and you'd look out, and it was like biblical. There was, it was like the Bedouins off in the distance, and all the, it was again, like I say, it was like you were back in time. So, and you could feel that. You could feel the like I say, the timeline of civilization, sort of.
Do you think you fully understood the magnitude of what you're seeing when you first went there at 16, or did that sink in later? That you're like, oh my gosh, I was at the, like you're reading historical texts and stuff, and then you're like, oh my God, I was there.
Yeah, I think. Of course, I was a 16-year-old who was like going to be missing out all summer. Like the first time I think I went, I was going to be missing out all summer on the, I think I was just going to be getting back in time for basketball camp and things like that. So of course I was probably, I was more worried about what my friends were going to be doing over the summer that I might be missing out on. But no, I think as soon as you see the Nile and you see the, everything is so different. It was easy for me anyway to become really enthralled with being there and getting to see as much as possible. So, my mom and I got trapped one time, and I took a picture of her, or I think maybe of her or a donkey cart, and I took a picture in front of a house that was, or we took a picture in front of a house that was, I'm not sure exactly, but politically, and whether it was Palestine or who we took a picture in front of, but the home was one that was somehow politically contested in some ways. And as soon as we took that picture, we were swarmed by guards and of course people speaking different language that we did not speak, and not knowing. And quickly
you go to Egypt for your summer vacation, and you cause an international incident taking pictures.
Yes. And so they quickly carted us off. We had to go with them. I'll never forget. We had to go. My mother was telling me, just stay calm, stay calm. She somehow got a hold of my dad. Well, there was always a driver and things like that, and so somehow they got a hold of the company, and so they sent certain individuals to come and assist in getting us out. And believe it or not, they handed us back. We thought for sure they'd take the film and everything like that, but they handed us back and the camera with the film. But when it was all said and done, but lots of gifts were exchanged and things like that. It was really intense. I think
still-
my
do you have- do you
my
still
mom
have the
didn't want to
picture?
leave the flat. No, and that was my mom would say that. My mom's deceased now, but we would talk about that. And, like, why did not we develop that? Why did we,
You
where
didn't
did
even
that
develop
go?
the film?
We didn't.
There could have been something really cool.
I think when it sunk in, like, how serious, like, oh my gosh, where would we, we were lucky that all worked out as well as it did. So it was an adventure. I think my mom did not want to leave the flat, and then, where, the most of the other wives and things like that would go and stay. I think we stuck pretty close to that area afterwards.
Well,
She wasn't
I think
too
that shows when
adventurous.
you're traveling and you're working in another place with a large multinational corporation behind you, that it makes it easier to get out of situations like that.
I think so. I think
Yeah.
so. I think you're right about that. Yeah.
So
I think you're
when
right
you
about
travel,
that.
do you take pictures in front of random houses anymore?
Don't anymore. I don't think I ever did after that.
You
I think
never
it was
take
a one and
pictures when
done.
you're
I
traveling?
think it was a one and done.
All done.
I think it was a one and done.
Don't need any
Looking
of that.
around, just making sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was pretty exciting. Yeah. So first time I ever had figs, and they have figs over there. They're like the size of softballs. So that was
Were they good?
amazing. Oh, they were wonderful, wonderful. They also now again, I'm sure things are very different. It's been a long time, but traveling down the street, you'd also see the meat hanging, and they'd be spraying Raid on it. So,
To keep the bugs off
yeah,
it?
to keep the bugs off of it.
A
So
little extra seasoning.
this was in the 90s, though, so I'm sure things have changed. So, yeah.
When was the last time you were in Egypt?
Oh, it would have been, let's see, Eddie and I got married in 95. So, and they went to Nigeria the year that we got married. So, he was transferred. So it would have been like 90, it was probably 93 or so. Whenever,
So your parents
last
were there
time.
for like 3 or 4 years?
Yeah.
Okay. And they went to
Yeah.
Nigeria after that?
And they went to Nigeria after that.
Did you visit in
I
Nigeria?
didn't. Nope, I never went there. So.
So mom and dad are in Egypt. You're
Mm-hmm.
finishing up high school in Michigan. Were you staying with your sister then, who was in college, or were you with other family friends?
Staying with my sister. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So they had got us a condo, and
Now, did you make life easy on your older sister, or were there some times when she?
tried, but I
Do we need to verify this
we
with
need to
your older
yeah.
sister?
She
on,
might have a different story. But no, I think for the most part we got along pretty well. And like I say, I did have a close group of friends, and so had parents from my close friends who we were often always together anyway at our various houses, and so life didn't change too much, which is, I think, was the point of my parents, agreeing to me being able to stay.
They figured you had it dialed in.
Yes, yeah.
So it was what, your last 3 years of school?
By the time they actually were both gone, it was my last 2 years.
Last 2 years?
Yeah, my last 2 years. I was young when I graduated high school.
So you met Eddie and your husband Eddie in high
Yes.
school.
I was in the 8th grade. He was in the 9th grade, actually. So
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Cradle robber
Right.
Eddie.
Exactly. So and we got married when I was 20 and he was 21. So now when anything goes sideways, I always tell him, like, well, what do you expect? You married a 20-year-old. What do you expect? So didn't have it all figured out.
Yeah. So high school sweethearts.
Yeah.
And then through high school, what were you involved in? Any activities? Any clubs? What?
Yes, actually. So we both went to a small private Catholic school there in Mount Pleasant, Michigan, is where it's a college town. I later went on, I went to grad school there years later, but when we moved back to Michigan. Basketball, played a lot of sports, mostly sports and then, I liked school, I always have, so National Honor Society, all that good stuff. Yeah.
So then out of high school,
At high school.
did you go to college right away?
I did. So my parents came back from Nigeria the year I graduated from. Well, actually, no, I take that back. They came back. There was a space. Actually, I'm totally missing my own timeline.
Can't be changing your story here because they went from Egypt to Nigeria
I know.
when you got married.
No. So I'm missing my timeline here. So they came back from Egypt whenever I graduated high school, and they went to Louisiana. So there was a couple years that they were in Louisiana, and so that's how I got to LSU, because they came. I was all set to go to school in a town that was 15 minutes from where I went to high school, and it was a small school. I was going to be a lawyer, so I had that all set. And they came back and said, we're going to be living in Louisiana. I was like, where even? I've never even been to Louisiana. So they went to Lafayette, Louisiana, and they said I had to come. And so my dad laid out some books in front of me and said, you can go to any of these schools. And I looked at him and said, which one's farthest from you? He said, that would be LSU. And I said, that's where I'm going then. That's where I'm going, because I was all mad at him. But so then, there was a couple years that they were in Louisiana. That's how I got. And then when Eddie and I got married, that's when they went to Nigeria. So 95.
See, I did not know you were a
Tiger?
LSU Tiger.
Yes, yeah. Well, I didn't graduate from there. That's where I went.
Still, you were there for 2 years.
I was there for 2 years.
There's some bad blood that developed in those 2 years where you're down at LSU. Yeah.
Well, and I went there so Shaquille O'Neal had, his girlfriend was still there in our dorms. And he would come and visit. And he'd pull up, he had this little gold sports car, and he'd fold himself all into this gold sports car, this little gold Porsche to pick her up. And he'd come and he'd visit. He had to walk past the athletic dorm to get to the where we all ate, and you'd see him.
So you were there a year after he had gone pro?
I think so, because he was there to visit, friends and his girlfriend who was in our dorm. So, yeah.
So 2 years.
Little freshman.
So you go. This is all over the place here.
I know.
This is I'm kind of jealous that you look at the different places.
It sounds much more fascinating than maybe it was.
Well, it usually sounds more fascinating to the people that weren't there than the ones that go through it.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
Because the people that haven't had the experience are going, oh my God, that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
The people that are doing it oftentimes are like, man, that was hell. I was back and forth. I wasn't getting settled anywhere. I mean, there's downfalls to it too, but just looking at the different, not only in going to Egypt, but also within the United States, the different places. You were on both coasts. Mm-hmm. You were in the north. You were in the south. You're seeing a lot of the cultural areas of the United States.
Yes.
While you were growing up.
Yes.
And seeing those cultures and the way people were interacting and their habits and things like that at a very young age, I think is a very good foundation for the rest of life.
Absolutely. And I think
even though you didn't want to be in Louisiana, I think it was
good
for you in the long run.
It was such good. I have 2 lifelong friends who are still like my sisters today, who I would not have in my life if I had not gone there. So, absolutely.
So while you're in Louisiana, where's Eddie?
Well, he came. He followed me.
He followed you down there?
He followed me down there.
Okay.
And he was planning to go in the military. He was a year older than me in high school.
Yep.
And so he had already been out for a year. I think he was going to try the school route, but then kind of always knew he wanted to do military. And then, so he came down to be with me for just a little bit, and then went into the military, went into boot camp. So
What service?
The Army.
Army.
I went into the Army. Yep.
Yep. And so you're finishing up school. He's in the Army.
Yep. We decided to get married.
Okay.
And take off to.
So you got married after your 2 years at LSU?
Yes. Yeah, because he did his hardship tour. We decided to, that it would be easier if he did his hardship tour the year before we got married. So
okay,
we did that.
So he comes back from his hardship tour. You got 2 years into school. Mm-hmm. Did you just figure out where he was going to get assigned next and apply for schools there?
Yes. Yep.
And where did that end up being?
That was in Georgia.
Georgia.
So okay. Hinesville, Georgia. Yep. Hinesville, Georgia. And so near Savannah. Mm-hmm. And so we got married and moved to Georgia. That was our honeymoon. That was our move, and it was pretty easy. I think most schools, near military bases, certainly made it easy for spouses and things like that. So
what school did you go to in Georgia?
I went to Georgia Southern University in
Southern.
Statesboro.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so we lived in Statesboro. He commuted for a little bit of the time. We lived in Statesboro, and he commuted, and then for a little bit of the time we lived on base.
So did you finish your bachelor's at Georgia Southern?
I didn't.
Because he got transferred and you probably went somewhere else.
We did, exactly.
All right.
So we went to Colorado. But we had a surprise. We got pregnant with our first child. And so that sort of slowed things down a little bit for my undergrad, but not too much. But we ended up going to Colorado Springs after Georgia, and so my undergraduate is from the University of Colorado. So,
Wait a second. University of Colorado's in Boulder, but you're in Colorado Springs.
They have a campus.
They have a campus there? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was in Colorado Springs.
No.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense
Yeah.
that they have another campus there.
Yep.
So you're raising a young child, finishing up school.
Just had a baby. So
Just had a
when I
baby,
graduated.
finishing up, got your undergrad.
Got my undergrad.
What'd you get your undergrad in
sociology. So I was a political science major. I was going to go, my whole plan the whole time was to go to law school. I was going to work for a DA somewhere and put away bad guys. I believe, at that time I kind of believed in restorative justice, which I probably do. I probably have more access to that now in this career than I would have in that career. But
yeah.
So that was my plan. And then kids, then we got surprised by first.
So you got your first child.
Yep.
How did that change what you got your degree in sociology?
Yep.
What did you immediately decide to go into graduate school? Did you look for jobs in the field?
Well,
what did that look like?
Well, what it looked like was, so our kids are 8 months and 8 days apart. So we got our second surprise quickly after our first. Thank you, Army doctor, for not explaining things. As well as maybe
you're waiting for the Army doctor to explain things.
I guess we did. We didn't understand how things were. No. So our kids are 8 months and 8 days apart. Our second child, our son, he was born premature. Mm-hmm. So what ended up happening was, again, we had just had Pagelin, found out we were pregnant again, and we were pregnant for about a month. And then my water broke. And so then there's this amazing hospital in Colorado Springs called Memorial Hospital, who, unbeknownst to us, so right across town from Evans Army Hospital in Colorado Springs, is this amazing NICU. And so when, Eddie and I are, I think, 20 or maybe 23 at this point. So we're very, very young. And along comes Addison. And of course, a very scary situation. My water broke actually at, I was 21 weeks pregnant at that point when my water broke, and I was in the hospital in what they call Trembellenberg, upside down. The doctors had kind of said, hey, it seems, they had prepared us basically. Mm-hmm. And said, you'll have to deliver and he won't make it, those kind of things. And so we were really prepared for that. But as the days went by, they said, well, wait a minute, you're not losing as much amniotic fluid as we thought you would. And he seems to have moved in this area, so we can try. And there's a bigger story there, because Eddie and I, although we were raised Catholic, I don't know that we, at that point, we didn't necessarily have a complete understanding of who God was and is. And so I guess I should backtrack here because this is a big part of the story too. So right before my water broke with Addison, I had been visiting my oldest sister in Kansas because Eddie was deployed somewhere. Mm-hmm. And so Paige and I would often go and visit family or friends whenever he was deployed. And so I had been visiting her and visiting her church, and she had, they all have their hands in the air, and they're all, praying and singing. And I'm like, what do you see? What are you guys all looking at? Right? And so I'd had some really deep conversations with my sister around God and around faith, and to this day she'll say she has no idea why she said it, but I remember telling her, Eddie and I have always been together. I don't know that I don't know that I could change how I think about faith and about God if he doesn't. And she said she has no idea why she said it. She goes, well, you never know. Something could happen. Something big could happen. Then, and both of you could really have an understanding of where your faith really is. And she says to this day, she's like, and then 2 weeks later, my water breaks. And all of a sudden, what? Eddie and I are faced with this sense of wait a minute, we're really praying for the very first time. And we're really moved by the Spirit. And we're really understanding the power of prayer for the very first time in our lives.
2 weeks earlier, your sister said that.
2 weeks early, and she'll, to this day, she'll say, I have no idea. And they're both of them are in ministry and things like that. And she said, she felt bad about it, actually. She was like, well, that might be what it takes. Is something big happening to you or the kids, or something big happening? So that's
Wow.
Yep.
I'm sorry. I just got, yeah. No, because earlier we were talking with Vince Hansen, and I was talking to him about being during the slide and the time that, I just broke down when had to talk about David and Janae being presumed deceased, and you were a big part of creating what I was saying on that at the time. And just feeling in that moment, that connection, like, okay, now I understand what people are talking about. I had no idea you had a moment like that.
Yeah, absolutely. When my water first broke, I had just been to my sister's, and I had just been really, I would say, grappling with my faith for the very first time as an adult. Because again, we were raised Catholic. We went to Catholic school, nuns, priests, where we were in Mass. At one point, we were in Mass every day, actually. So, but here I am for the very first time alone in a room, and, here's where I'll probably cry too, for the very first time, calling out to God and saying, I don't, please don't take him. Don't do this. And just feeling the whole room fill up with a presence saying, trust me. So by the time Eddie gets to me, I can backtrack here too. By the time Eddie gets to me, on the night that my water broke, I have such a sense of peace. And I think he probably thought that I had gone crazy. I think he probably thought he had no idea, right, as a young man, what was actually happening.
He's thinking you're going to come in and you're just losing your...
Yes. Yeah. He thinks he definitely is thinking. And he probably, at that point, he didn't know what to expect either. But very much so, I had what I would say definitely is oftentimes I think people can go their whole lives, and I really admire those people that have not had these, what I would say is just an encounter, just such an encounter with God. And like I say, that room filled up with that sense of trust me. And I'll never forget the ceiling tiles and just seeing like a cross kind of form with the ceiling tiles. And all of a sudden that just come, like I always think of those I forget what they're called, but those pictures where you have to like dilate your eyes and all of a sudden you can see the picture behind them, right? It was like that. So by the time Eddie gets to me, I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to be okay. It's going to be okay. He's going to be okay. We're going to be all right. And of course, then the doctors and everybody are telling him absolutely not. There's your child's not going to live and these kind of things. And I'm
but
saying,
then it was within, you said, a few days, the doctors start telling you like, hey, we got a chance now.
Yes, we can try.
This is gonna.
Yep. Yeah, and everybody that came in, it was just unbelievable. The nurses, the lady who came every day and who was on the cleaning staff, who just said, can I pray with you? Would that be okay? And it was like, yes, absolutely. And so there was such a strengthening of our faith during that time. And like I say, I mentioned earlier, a friend who is like a sister to me. She and I, that had been an area that she was very sure of, and as a young person, her parents had passed away when she was a baby, and she has a connection and an understanding of her own spirituality from a very early age, and so that just strengthened our relationship too during that time, and so many, again, just it changed everything, and so there was a lot of change going on during that time for us both, faith-wise and personally, because I would have probably gone, was planning to go to law school. That was our plan. We were going to go back to Michigan when he got out of the military, and my plan was to go to law school, but Addison came early, and then we did well, and they got us over to the other hospital, and where they had 3 neonatologists, and one of the neonatologists actually was one of the ones that invented the vent that kept babies alive. So here you had just the best of the best in the country right across town.
And you wouldn't have been there if Eddie wasn't in the Army.
Right. Yeah. So I think that was meant to be. And so, but it's an amazing hospital and an amazing NICU. They take such good care of their nurses. The way it's set up is that the nurses get to pick the families, and let's say the nurses had, maybe just worked with a family that the baby didn't make it. They give those nurses a chance to decide whether or not they want to be the primary nurse. Based on how they were mentally and things like that. And so that was my first experience with anything mental health wise. I had no concept, no idea of anything, in terms of mental health in my family of origin. It was something that you
never talked about.
You never talked about, or was something that was not even a real science or those kind of things. So, but
before you go further,
okay,
after Addison was born, how long was he in the NICU?
He was in the NICU for 122 days.
Holy cow.
Vented for 88. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yep. And this is where that hospital was so amazing. I got to hold him. We got to do this kangaroo care, which was also traumatic in many ways. He coded on my chest the very first time, and they had to resuscitate him. But what they said is that for him to have the best chance was that skin-to-skin contact. So Eddie and I would both, Eddie did better at home with Pagelin, and I did better at the hospital. And so so we were a good team during that time. But it was harder for him to be just sitting, as and again here is, the Army was amazing. They had his soldiers on rear detachment, so he could go and check in and then be at the hospital or with us and things like that. But it was we would do this what's called kangaroo care. And so because my first instinct when I saw him the very first time, right, we have him and he's in the NICU, and the NICU is they don't have the little. He was too small for the little incubators, and so they're all in these bays, right? So it's a big bay, and it's open actually, so they can get to the babies quickly if they need to. And so the first time I saw him, he was the size of a beanie baby. He was 1 pound 7 ounces. So yeah, just tiny little human. And if you've seen him now, he is a big guy like Eddie. He's a big strapping guy.
He's a little ways away from 1 pound 7 ounces.
Yes, he's very. Right. Which is funny because Pagelin was 7 pounds 1 ounce.
Okay. Yeah.
Crazy, so crazy. But the first time I saw him, I remember just thinking like, I just want all those wires off him. I just want just give him to me kind of thing. And so it was, again, I think why he has done as well as he did, is that hospital was just way ahead when it came to care.
What's the name of the hospital?
Memorial Community Hospital, so in Colorado Springs. So, just amazing. And so they had it down. And one of the things they had down was that when it was time for the nurses to charter all those kind of things, they just kind of pushed the family into these family groups. So they had, parents for, who had graduated from the NICU and things like that, come and talk to you. And they were so dialed in from day one on how
their
to
support
take
system
care of their
was
supports.
Right dialed in.
So dialed in for the nurses, for the parents. So you had staff, you had the parents taken care of. And they sent a therapist to the house. That was just something that they just signed you up for. I'm sure they might have asked, and I must have said, okay. I don't remember that. But so they sent a therapist, and that was my first experience with the therapist. And she came to the house, and I'll never forget, because of course it was traumatic, and of course there was I actually had quite a bit of medical trauma too, because they had given me so much medication to keep me from having contractions and things like that, and it was very scary to have him. We couldn't have any more children, so whenever he was born, it was a very traumatic birth, and so. So, of course, that's not even in my mind, right? But it was in hers. And so she talked to me about things that I didn't even know that I was probably suppressing or keeping trapped, because it was all I was so focused on was him and taking care of him and Pagelin. And so
you're 22 years old on this set?
I'm 23.
23.
Yep, I'm 23. Yeah, 23 years old.
Oh, my gosh.
Yep. And I'll never forget, she told me, and I still use this with clients today, she said, nobody wants to make, if you think of a filing cabinet, nobody wants to make a file folder for trauma or for something very scary that happens to you. It's like, so one of the first things you have to do is you have to just acknowledge that it happened, right? You have to just, it's okay to say that what is really is, right? It's okay. And then, because if you don't, it's all your experiences are going to jam up on you, and you're not going to be able to eventually close that filing, and eventually then you're going to have to pull that filing cabinet back out, reach in there, get all those, sheets that, haven't been filed away, smooth them out and put them into the file folder, basically. And that's what therapy is. Oftentimes folks have not addressed things, and so they really do, they don't have a place to go in our big filing cabinet of self. And so, but it was so amazing. I had no idea that I even needed to see somebody, and how this stranger who came into my home, who was so loving and caring, and my first thought was just like, wow, how I didn't even know these kind of people existed. So this kind of profession existed, or yeah.
While you're telling this story, I'm just thinking in my head through all the stress factors that would have been on you and Eddie at this time.
Yeah.
And I'm probably not even imagining all of them, but just the ones that I can think of are rather overwhelming.
Yeah.
You're 23 years old. He's 24. You've got an infant at home. You've got a kid your youngest in the NICU for 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
He's in the Army. I mean, we all know the military doesn't get paid nearly what they probably deserve.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine trying to handle keeping all those balls in the air, much less the stress factor and what that's doing to each of your bodies at the same time. You guys must have been exhausted.
We were definitely exhausted. When I look back now, I don't even know how we did it. Like, when did I sleep? Because, having a little one at home, like I say, I really give a lot of, people can say a lot of different things about the military, but our experience definitely with the Army was they were amazing to us. They were, all of a sudden, things changed, with his day-to-day responsibilities and things like that. So they gave him a lot of opportunity to be with his family. And I don't know that that's always the case, but that was our experience. So it was, yeah.
Now, did the prayer and the faithfulness continue?
It did, because so then, of course, my sister and brother-in-law come, and like I say, they're in ministry, and so they brought with them, again, their prayer groups, all of these new experiences to us, very different than what we had experienced before. And so that was a bit overwhelming too, but at the same time, it was one of those things where you're like, this is working. This has just felt right. It just felt right. So yeah, there was some changes there. We had some different experiences, and I think, they got in touch with a couple different pastors, and then they came to visit us at the church or at the, in the hospital, and then we had different supports then. And if you know anything about Colorado Springs, it's a very divided community because you have Focus on the Family there, and then the rest of the community. So even, it's a community that has, a little divided there, or at least was. So
you bring Addison home from the hospital. Mm-hmm. Was that a little nerve-wracking?
Oh, just a little. Yeah, just a little. Because he came home on oxygen in a G-tube, and I'll never forget when my sister came back again.
How big was he when you brought him home?
Oh gosh. Okay, so he had to pass 4 pounds to be able to go.
To go home.
Yep, and we kept like teetering on it and things like that. So yeah, and we thought he was huge, right? We thought he was just huge.
Well, he was twice as big, twice as big. Yeah, of course he's going to look huge.
Yep. Yeah, we just
he's
thought
more
he was
than double
huge.
in size.
Yes, yeah. And at that time, the only place that sold preemie clothes was the Gap. So it was like all my girlfriends went to the Gap and got him clothes and stuff like that. So tiny little clothes. So he was he had all the issues that little preemie born at 23. So he was actually born at 23 in 5 days. That was his official. The time, what they had said, how old he was. And it was amazing because all the things that happen in utero happen on the same timeline. And so like his eyes opened when they would have been opening in utero, but when he was in the NICU and things like that. So, but
how long from when he came home to when you're like, okay, this kid's gonna make it? Or was it when he came home that you can just treat him like Pagelin when she was a baby? I mean, where does that? I'm thinking you got to be.
If you ask the kids, I might still. I mean,
it's still going on.
It still might go on. He didn't necessarily enjoy school, and I think even in his early years of school, I would be like, well, he's alive. So if he wasn't doing the greatest, I'm like, well, he's alive. He's here. So he might not be the greatest at spelling.
Doesn't matter.
I don't know that we're going to really work on that. He'll be fine. He's alive. So I think I probably always had, and again, I attribute this to how dialed in the hospital was. They brought, parents who not only had graduated, but who had also lost children. So they had, we had opportunity to speak to many different parents and to be mentored by whether it was other parents or other health professionals, and had the opportunity. And this is another mental health. One of the social workers came in and talked to us and very specifically said, don't let this be your child's identity. You can't take all of your anxiety now and hover. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm very proud every once in a while you'll hear him talk about things and he'll say like, yeah, I have this big scar, I have these things. And he's like, and I know I was a preemie, but I don't know a lot more about it other than that. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, such a big deal. So, and he had some deformity in his hands that he may or may not have had anyway. Eddie's dad was in Vietnam, and there was some Agent Orange, and so he had his digits were fused, and he also has kind of a mark that they can attribute now to what they think is Agent Orange, and Eddie does too, and his siblings do, and so they kind of attribute to that maybe he would have had these same deformities within his hands had he been born full term. Mm-hmm. But it's also something that happens with preemies. So he also had to have some additional surgeries and things like that. But and it was very harrowing whenever he was in the NICU. It wasn't this, it wasn't smooth sailing. It was day to day, very day to day, and his heart rate would drop and things like that, and he was the way that it worked. All those neonatologists, unless they agreed, all three of them agreed, they did not move forward with anything that they did, and so they all had to give a yes for there to be any surgeries or things like that, which was amazing because they were all they all had their different specialties, and so mm-hmm. It was in such good hands. There was one of the doctors that all the families, we all called him Dr. Death or Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom because whenever he would come to you to tell you anything, it was doom. And so when he came and told us that Addison would probably always need glasses while Eddie's sitting there in his glasses and I have my contacts in, and he tells it to you in a way like it's the worst thing. You're just like, and we're being punked, like what's the, but that was everything was serious. He was not lighthearted. There was nothing. So he would deliver everything in that same manner. So you got used to it. But it was reassuring though too that you had three of them deciding what was going to go on, and he was they did not end up doing it, but he needed a surgery where they Nissen and G-tube were to stop him from regurgitating because that was what was causing his heart to drop, and they had not done it on a baby that young before, but they felt that they needed to, and then they decided not to. They told us we had to risk it, and he made it, which was good, but they almost did. So like I say, he was each day brought something new early, and so He probably wasn't. I don't know that I felt like we were out of the woods. I think it felt good to leave the hospital for sure. And they had us dialed in. This is another part of my, being a therapist, is they had us dialed in to OT, speech, and physical therapy right from the NICU. So we went, and it gave me something as a parent to do, right? Because you feel so powerless, you feel so helpless, and so with the sensory integration, that was my first experience with sensory integration, and that's a lot of in the mental health world, you're working with people and you're recognizing that some of this is actually physiological. So sure, we don't, some of these anxieties and things like that are coming from your people's environments, and some people, again, sound and all of those, have some sensory integration issues. And so that's been something throughout my career that I'm so thankful that I knew early on, because I think at times it has helped me in my career to notice with folks sometimes, to say like, hey, sure, this is causing some anxiety, but I also think we need to bring on board an OT that specializes in sensory integration and things like that.
So Addison's home from the hospital.
Yes.
Now you said that the Army was really good about working with Eddie. Did their plans for Eddie, as far as when he would have been transferred somewhere else, did that change? Do you think you guys stayed in Colorado Springs longer than you might have if you hadn't had a child in the NICU?
No. I think we were still on I think he was still within that his deployment time for there. It did change our decision to stay in, because we were going back and forth, prior to that, of if he was going to make a career out of it, because he kind of thought that it did fit for him to have a career in the military. Mm-hmm. And so, but that, we didn't know how much help Addison was going to need. He didn't have any brain bleeds, which was amazing for a baby born at his age. But they did tell us, we're not quite sure yet on what long-term his care will look like, or what he'll need and things like that. So we thought being, going back to Michigan, or, being closer to some family would be a good idea at that point. So
how long after he got out of the NICU? So I'm assuming, from what you're telling me, Eddie finalized his commitment to the military, and
yes.
Then you guys moved back to Michigan.
There's about a year and a half in
okay.
there. So
was there some trepidation that, even though it's a year and a half, you've had this amazing support system at the hospital, that now you're leaving all of that support system? You've got friends and family and everything in Michigan, but that had to be a little scary.
It was because we had our we had a home there. There was the first home we'd ever bought was there, so we had there was some things that we were comfortable with, for sure. Yeah, and a lot of support. So. Yep. So I think it helped. The physical therapist that was there, she was from Michigan, and I think, it kind of, I don't know, made there were some connections there that kind of spoke like, hey, this is probably a good place for us to go.
So when you made the decision to go back to Michigan, mm-hmm. what was the game plan going back to Michigan?
Well, the timeline, Eddie did have to get, he had to be deployed at a certain point to. And so just with his regular duties mm-hmm. and things like that. And so we kind of knew that the kids and I might be going ahead of him back to Michigan. And that is, so we put our house up for sale, and it sold very quickly. So that changed the timeline there mm-hmm. as well, too. It kind of sped up the timeline. And so I ended up living with his parents and getting to experience his childhood for a couple months there before when he was getting out.
So he's deployed. You're back at your in-laws with mm-hmm. two young toddlers. One of them just little less than a year and a half out of the NICU.
Yeah.
That's pretty bold of them to invite that. I mean, you do it for your kids and stuff, yep. But still, that's a lot to bring into the house.
Yeah, it was. And they had, my Eddie's younger siblings were still in high school and stuff.
Still in high school.
Yeah, so it was a packed house. So, yeah.
But
I understand him so much more now after that experience. Yeah.
So what was the plan? Were you going to be a stay-at-home mom for a while? Because
Well, I knew that I was not going to leave them, and he was still. I think by that point we didn't leave until he was off of oxygen, so that was a pretty big milestone right there. We knew we would stay, and so he was still on the heart monitor, I believe, but he had gotten off of oxygen. He no longer needed his G tube, and so we'd hit some pretty big milestones before we went back to Michigan. We stayed where we, the comfort of the doctors that we had right out of the NICU. So, but I had been looking because my plan was to go, to grad school, to law school anyway, and so I had already been looking, and then I was like, well, wait a minute, what is this counseling thing? What is this social work? What is all this? Because there's of course a difference between a licensed professional counselor and a social worker, and so I started to explore that, and I think I naturally already had this. My friends would say, people just come up and talk to you. People just tell you things. So when I
they do. They still do.
So when I first started talking to my girlfriends and my confidants about it, they were just like, "Of course, this sounds great for you. It sounds like
what
exactly
took you so long
what
to
you
come
should
up
do,
with this
right?
idea?"
Exactly. So, and I looked into it, and the Central Michigan University had a wonderful program for therapists, a master's degree there. So, and I knew that the kids were not gonna, I wasn't gonna, we couldn't afford to put him in any daycare that would, he would need like a nurse and things like that at this point still. So, so that was kind of already chosen for us, and Eddie's dad worked for, it was GTE still at the time. So, so the plan was for Eddie to come back and start being in telecommunications, a telephone man. So, so that was kind of, in fact, he got out of the military and flew home, and the very next day he started his job. So,
started his job.
Yep. So there was not even a.
So did you?
break.
But you're saying you couldn't have him. Couldn't have Addison at a daycare needed a nurse.
Right.
So if Eddie's going to work, you're starting school, or did you wait a while before you started school?
I waited. Yeah, I waited. So I waited probably about another year and a half or so before I started school. One of the things that made it a little easier, though, was that the program that I got him into was part of at the university, and so there was already kind of this connection of knowing, like, okay, where he's going to go and get some services. It seemed like, wait a minute, I could start to take some classes. I could start to do this. So, so all of a sudden, it seemed like it was a little bit more of an option, just based on how his care was set up too. So, yeah. And so you started grad school, applied to grad school, got in. So
you got your master's.
Yep. So I go to grad school, get my master's. And then while I'm in grad school, I meet a friend who we had been in the same circles, but had never really known one another in high school. And we both interned at the same place, and through that realized that there was an option for us to start our own business. And so right out of grad school, started a counseling agency. Where we had interned was closing, and so it was an easy fit for us to start something and take over. It was at the hospital, actually, where we both interned, and they no longer wanted to be running this program out of the hospital. And so we were like, hey, we could do this. We would have to expand it to be able to make a living, but we could do this. And so we started Central Michigan Professional Counseling Associates, which is still up and going today. I'm very proud of that. So still going. So, and we became the field site supervisors for the program that we graduated from. We brought on another, I forget how many graduate interns went through the program and went through. And so, but yeah, so I started a business together with a good friend. And
so you're 27 when you're starting all this?
Yep.
Starting your business
empire. And we were both young mothers, and so it was pretty important to us that we, we watched each other's kids and things like that whenever one of us was working late or those kind of things. So we were, it was a good environment.
So you're Michigan for how long? Because I think your next step is North Carolina, correct?
Yes, is North Carolina. So we're in Michigan for about 8 years. And then by that time, GTE had sold out to Verizon. And then Verizon was expanding, so Eddie worked, and they sent him down to North Carolina to do storm damage after Hurricane Ivan.
Okay.
And so Eddie goes down, and he just loves North Carolina. And the company is talking sort of layoffs and things like that. So we were also like, oh man, this could, we're not quite sure of this future, here. And it was, it was difficult because I loved my, I loved my job. I loved the company and things like that. So that was going very well, but his job had the future of, and they really did. They started to do quite a few layoffs. And so we were like, wait, we probably should really take a look at transferring within the company. So he worked for the same company for 17 years until we came to Alaska, actually. Mm-hmm. So they just changed. They were GTE, and then they were Verizon, and then they went to Frontier. So we transferred to Burnsville, North Carolina, which is right outside of Asheville. So it's western North Carolina. We went down there a few times. We went down and visited him whenever he, because again, like after Hurricane Ivan, it was a huge, of course, storm and rebuild. So he was down there a couple, different times. Really, again, fell in love with it. And like you said, I came from an early childhood experience where there was lots of travel. There was always travel, actually. So that seemed like something we would want to do.
And then... Yeah. You're in North Carolina 9 years.
I think we were there for 8 years. I think we're there for 8 years. I'm so bad with dates. Notice I'm bad with dates.
And then, so I understand you go from Michigan to North Carolina. Eddie loved it because he went down there with storm damage.
Yes.
North Carolina to Alaska.
Well, okay.
That seems a little bit more of an extreme of a move, Cesre.
So it does. But there's so
I'm sure there's a story.
So Eddie has it figured out. He has it figured out when I graduate that he has always loved Alaska. And Alaska is a lot. I mean, there's
had he been to
Michigan,
Alaska?
He hadn't. No, neither
so
of us
just
had since we first the idea of it.
Idea of Alaska.
Yes,
okay.
The idea of it. And so my family had actually lived in, before I was born, they lived in Fairbanks. So my family had like my sister, they would talk about, the time that they spent in Alaska fondly, right? And so he had, that as well. So I guess close to being here. But yeah, so when I graduated, and of course had student loans, when I graduated, there was these programs where I could get my student loans paid if we went to Bethel. And we had no idea and how remote that would be. And at the time, the kids were young, and we still, like Addison, still saw specialists for different things and things like that. So it wasn't an option, but we researched it right when I graduated. So we were kind of like, hey, is this an option? And I think Eddie saw this. He saw the postings for here, and I'll never forget, and I still don't know what reality TV show. I think it was Casey Anderson with the bear. He comes and he visits maybe Crochel. He visits somebody, but we saw a documentary on the Chilkat Valley, and I remember telling Eddie because it had Crochel's. It had him in it because, again, I remember, like, watching and seeing the mountains and everything. And I remember telling Eddie, like, we'll all move to Alaska, wherever that is. So I was like, that looks wonderful. I'll move there. And so... And then, that was early on.
So he's clocking that in his mind.
He's clocking it. He tucks it away because then, fast forward years later, right, we had been in North Carolina, and then I had developed some health issues. I have an autoimmune that's in my lungs, and at that point we didn't know. It's called sarcoidosis. At that point we didn't know what it was, and so I'd been having a little bit of health issues, and my girlfriend, who kind of is like a family member, lives in Salem, Oregon, and Eddie's company there as well. And so she kept saying to me, you know what, why don't you come here? We have these great doctors here. We have, the kids can have these experiences. We can be closer to all those kind of things. And so, so we thought, wow, we'll try it. We never lived in, since we're a big city, we always lived in small rural places that you could go to big cities, but never, lived in a big city.
So where in Oregon?
Salem.
Salem's not a big city.
Well, to us it was.
Really?
Compared
to Asheville?
Well, we didn't live in Asheville.
Oh, that's
we
right.
Lived,
You were outside.
Yeah, we were outside.
Asheville.
We were in the mountains, probably 45 minutes from Asheville. So, so we go there, and the cool thing about North Carolina too, with my job, is that I had always, I had worked basically private practice in Michigan. We had a what we ran was an employee assistance program. And that's also, too, where I started working a lot with trauma, and I started working a lot with first responders. We kind of, my business partner and I, she wanted to work with kids, and I then said, okay, well, as we're going to kind of divide up our specialties here, and we're going to start to get different certifications and additional trainings. And she went the kid route, and I went the trauma first responder route, and the couples, to work with couples. And so... So that starts there, and then when I get to North Carolina, is my first experience with community mental health. And community mental health is very different than private practice or running your own EAP. And I started working in what in North Carolina, they have different levels of care, and they have outpatient care. Of course, that's where someone's coming in, and then they have these service lines, delivery lines, to where people are going out into the community. And so I first in these little teams, and so you have a therapist and then like 2 qualified health professionals, like what Scott is. Mm-hmm. And so then you have a team, and that team then has, takes care of people in the community, for the people who are severely, persistently mentally ill, the people who cannot, aren't going to be able to really make their office visits. And so I start working in North Carolina in community mental health, which had been completely different than what I had been doing, and worked for a company then and held a couple different positions, but started working mobile crisis. Eventually I go to mobile crisis. And so I learned so much there about trauma. I learned so much there about delivery of services and care right in the community. And so I really, those two my experience in Michigan, my professional experience in Michigan, and then follow up with North Carolina, then it really rounds out my experience. And so at that point too, I was also kind of burned out from community mental health and things like that, and then having some health issues, and then so that's sort of what gets us to Oregon briefly. But Salem to us is a big place, and Eddie was actually working in Portland, Hillsboro, so
Okay.
he's commuting to Hillsboro, and that was that's a huge cultural change, to go from rural North Carolina, the mountains, to then working in basically all around Portland and all around, and commuting 2 hours basically.
I was gonna say that's not a short commute.
No, it's not. No, with traffic, it's not at all. So we, so of course
So that's like a 12-hour day when you're factoring
it
in the
was.
commute on there.
Yeah, it was. And we didn't realize that. We did not realize that at all. And so, of course, he then,
Hey, remember that place you said we could go to?
Exactly. And I see him start, and I always joke, it's like you put a grizzly bear in an apartment, because I was like, oh, this is going to be so much fun. We've never lived in an apartment. We're going to live in an apartment. It's going to be great. All this kind of stuff. But we're going to have like all this urban living kind of thing. And oh boy, Eddie is, you know him. He's always dabbling. He's always outdoors. He's always doing something. And he slowly stopped doing all those. In fact, it was the only time I've ever seen him depressed, and it was sad. It was terrible, actually. And so, very quickly realized, like, wow, this is not going to be the case. So we thought we would go back to North Carolina. That was the plan. We'll let the kids. We already felt like we moved the kids around too much. The kids settled really well. They made friends. They had friend groups. They were in a youth group. Those kind of things. And so we were like, well, we've got to definitely let them finish high school here. We already had felt like we had disrupted their high school enough. And so the plan was that we would have them finish out. Then we were going to go back to North Carolina. In the meantime, though, he, again, looks at AT&T and he says to me, like, hey, remember that place you said that you moved to? And I was like, I'll entertain it. You don't have to say that it's that place. And he's like, no, I think it is. I think it's really that place. I was like, sure it is. So he's talking to AT&T. They're going back and forth. They're doing the interviews. And at first it was funny too, because the recruiter calls in like, do you know where you applied to? Like, are you sure? And so once that all got cleared, and AT&T brought us up here. And we got to visit, and it just felt right. It felt like a good fit. And
that was what year?
That was in 2017.
2017. Yeah.
Yep. So just felt right. The kids, we were new empty nesters, and the kids were definitely like, peace out, Mom and Dad. We do not know what you guys are still hanging around here for. Yeah. So yeah.
Go do your midlife crisis in Alaska.
Yeah, they kind of were like, sure, kind of laughing or whatever. But again, both of them just seemed to fit right in. Paige went to OSU. Addison started out at community college there in Salem, and so and had a really strong friend group that he still has to this day, and yeah.
So now you're in Alaska.
Now we're in Alaska.
So when you first got here, was there any? This isn't what I saw on TV, or was it? Oh my gosh, this is better than I saw on TV.
Well, we drove out the road, and it was kind of like, wow, this is what we saw on TV, and this is we both loved it. I mean, the mountains, the water, and being from Michigan, very used to being able to go to the Great Lakes, all of those kind of things, the outdoors. There were a lot of things that I think the first winter that we were here, it was very similar to Michigan winters, and I think both of us had missed that. North Carolina doesn't have those winters. Certainly Oregon doesn't have the same climate, and so I think it was it felt good to be here. And it was funny because you've heard me say this before, but multiple people, and I understand after living here, people would ask, how long are you going to stay? How long, do you think you'll live here? And my standard answer was always like, well, I don't know. It depends on how you all act. And I meant that. I was like, well, let's, but while I waited for my license to transfer, someone knew that I was bored and said, hey, there's these production companies that film reality TV here, and there's these job openings. You could go work for reality TV. And I said, well, I've never done that, but I'm game. And I kind of was like, yeah, this will be fun. And so I had I'm really thankful for that, because in my role there I had a chance to go and was always purchasing things and meeting everybody, purchasing things for production. And so
that's how I first met you, when you were coming in and getting stuff for Gold Rush.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that was a nice introduction. I thought and it was a nice introduction too. As a therapist, oftentimes you get and understandably so, people will just see you as the helper in that way, and that's certainly important, and I certainly don't want to dismiss how important that is and what an honor that is. But at the same time, not everybody gets to know you, right? They start to know you as the therapist, or you as so it was a nice way. It was really, I felt like it was a nice way to get to know the community first, and then start working.
Yeah, when you had said that you were leaving Raw TV and you had gotten this job with Search or whatever, for me, I wouldn't say it was a surprise, because just our interactions, it didn't surprise me that was a job you had, but never in our conversation up to that point had you ever mentioned about your credentials in your career or anything. It was like, oh, wow.
I think I was hiding out.
You were hiding out.
I was hiding out. I was a little, yeah. I was really enjoying.
All right, that's a whole different level of Cesre that I had no idea existed.
Yep. I remember, there was a day there that I think everybody was all up in arms about something that the talent had done. And I remember sitting across the room thinking, I usually am helping people that are suicidal. And I felt a little, I wouldn't say shame, but I felt a little, I missed my profession. And I knew it was time to go back. I knew. I was just like, wait a minute. There are people out there that are hurting in different ways that I actually have some skills for, and I actually need to be back to that role with my community members. And so, as you know, it was fun. It was a great time. I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was a lot of fun. But at the same time, there was that moment of me really realizing, wow, I really have been fortunate across my career to have just some really wonderful mentors, some amazing colleagues that I've learned so much from. And it did feel a little like, okay, you need to get serious.
enough of the show business.
Enough of the show business.
You need to get back to what you're.
I do, and I do think that everybody sort of like had that same kind of reaction that you're saying too. There was like, wait, what do you do? What do you really do? Are you sure? Like, yes, I'm sure.
Yeah. So then, so you're with Search for a couple years, and then December 2020.
Yeah.
Have the Landslide here in Haines, and I was a mayor at the time. We call up the emergency operations center, and I kept seeing you, and the first day or so, you and Kelly and Riley were always around, and I'm like, why are these guys always here?
Yeah.
I had no idea, and then during the meetings, Kelly would start giving us information. I'd talk to you and Riley in different places and everything. That was such a key. I had no idea. I didn't have any idea about any of it. I'd never been in that situation before. But the feedback and the training you guys were giving us to help us with the community, help the community at that whole time, and looking out for the people that were in the EOC. I didn't think we needed any help. We were just sitting in a room. Yeah. I thought you guys should be out with all the search and rescue people and everything like that. And you kept coming to the room. And I'm like, we're not doing anything. We're just sitting here. It dawned on me later why you guys were there. It didn't take me long to figure out, because you go home enough nights crying yourself to sleep. It's like, okay, now I understand why they're there. Yeah. And that was a huge learning experience for me, and having you guys there. And as I'm guessing you remember the number of times that you guys helped me write things that's like, okay, this is stuff we need to put out to the community. Yep. And I was always leaning on you guys. How do we do this in a way that not only gives people an idea what's going on, but also helps them with their own trauma and the grief that's going on, the trauma in the community, because everybody was affected. Yeah. Absolutely. And so I appreciate you guys helping me with that, because a lot of people are like, "Oh, that was a great job." Like, yeah, I'm just reading what they wrote for me. That's all I did.
It was an honor to be able to do that, and I think that it comes full circle, because I think that's exactly where how my career started, was somebody helping me when I didn't know that I was in the midst of trauma. Right. And so when that therapist came, and that and the hospital was providing tools in real time. Because again, you can have often if you look at the work of Sue Johnson and when we talk about like survival of the fittest, really what we're talking about is survival of the most nurtured, survival of the most who is most resourced. And so if in real time someone can be resourced, somebody can be taken care of during trauma, it does not cement into PTSD, or it can, you have a better chance of that trauma not being stored within the body, not being stored, and it's moved through. And that was our whole goal the whole time, down to the, again, I credit just having amazing mentors early on in my career. Isabella County in Michigan, lady named Kathy Tarrant, she did the crisis intervention, the Mitchell model, the crisis intervention stress management protocols, and she all across Isabella County and then Gratiot County, the county next to ours, and she had teams. This is what they did at this place called Listening Ear, and I had a chance to be trained in that, and so those models to be able to do the crisis intervention, stress management, the crisis intervention debriefings, right? Again, these things are just the research shows us that if we're utilizing these models, and if folks have a way to talk about what they're experiencing, you're not going to process it, but if you have a way to understand it and to know what's happening within your body, and to be told that often, right? These are things that are occurring for you. These are, then going home and crying is exactly what needs to happen, because you're having that discharge over and over, and it's not getting stored again and again.
It is. I remember one of the things you guys were talking about, and you can correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but about when our bodies feel danger, there's that fight or flight, and you can kind of you're in that until you kind of feel safe. And I didn't realize how, because I thought after the initial event that we're out of the EOC, I didn't realize how long that would take.
Yeah. The body only calms down. You only calm, so part of what I do as a therapist is a lot of the somatic awareness work. That's a big part of trauma, is that and that's your heart and your gut has neurons just like your brain does, but your heart and your gut doesn't have language, and we want to be able to think from our heart and our gut up into our head. Up here is where all of our fears exist. Up here is where all of that conditioning exists, right? And if we start up here at the top and then we drop down into our heart and our gut, we can just really have a lot of angst. But if we can start here from our heart and our gut, using those neurons, and think up into our brain, we can traverse a lot in life. We can get through a lot of things, because none of us, of course, get out of this life without having, experiencing pain and experiencing trauma, big T trauma, little t trauma. It's just part of the human experience. But so having you think, having you again drop down into your heart and gut and come back up and think, then again, now I can think through this, right? Your system only stands down when it truly believes that the thing that has happened to you is over. And it only believes that the trauma is over when enough good things have happened for you to believe, okay, this is finally over. And that was one of the things that worried me the most professionally. And again, you and I have talked about this. I saw it. I was the on-call provider at the time, and all my years of experience with mobile crisis and all that, I'm so thankful for, because I just went into, just went on autopilot, right, and just went right to where I felt like I needed to be, and it turned out to be the right spot and all that good stuff. But the thing that worried me was that there was so much unknown, and what was happening just kept continuing to come, and we had the wind and the rain, and so you had all of these things that just continued night after night, to where our systems were not going to stand down, because we were in the midst of trauma. We had the Black Hawk landing in the middle of town. We had
Well, and even the changes, we originally thought we were going to be able to open Beach Road within 4 or 5 days once it. And then having the geologist come and tell us it's like, oh no, this could be worse.
Yeah.
We got to study this, and then it's like, okay, that's a big hit, and feeling it for those of us managing the situation, but then also seeing how that affected all the people that were on the other side of the slide.
Yeah.
And,
in the midst of a pandemic.
And we're in the midst of a pandemic as well.
Yes.
But just that trying to balance all of that. And knowing that everybody is dealing with it differently. One of the key things that you guys had told us, I think it was Kelly that mentioned it to us, because we were really struggling with messaging. We thought we were getting all this information out to the community. We were doing Facebook posts. I was giving stuff to the radio station, everything. And we kept just getting slammed that you guys aren't telling us anything. You guys aren't telling us anything. How are we not? It was kind of like we're obviously talking two different languages. And Kelly was in the room one day when we were discussing that, and she goes, "You guys are missing the point." She says, in moments of trauma, correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but as I remember it, she says, in moments of trauma, people revert back to their oldest, the age of where their development stopped, or their so you could be talking to someone that's in kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
They look like they're 30 years old, 60 years old, that they're a well-functioning adult. But in trauma, we're going to recess back to a previous point in our life. Yeah. And so your messaging needs to be, and somebody said, what, at a kindergarten level? She said, exactly. Yeah. You're like, okay, how do we do that? Because this is a lot of complex stuff that we're trying to explain on what's going on. Mm-hmm. And so then trying to make it fit into that paradigm, that was, okay. I don't know how we're going to do that, because that's added 10 times the difficulty. We were struggling to get it out in terms that we could
you were so patient.
that we could understand.
Yeah.
But then getting it to that point was, I had no idea how we were going to do that, and I don't think we ever got it right.
Well, and what you're up against is that in survival mode, survival mode goes to, it is black and white. Survive or not survive, right? Mm-hmm. People are going to do whatever they need to do because the end goal is just survive, right? So if you've survived whatever it is, then that's a win, right? And so you're going to say what you need to say or do what you need to do. As long as you survive, that's the win. And so the problem is that people's minds get stuck in that, right? That black and white. It's either all good or all bad. Someone's giving me all the information or not enough information, right? So that's the hard part right there when someone's in survival mode. And you had people again through that were having all kinds of different experiences around the community being impacted, and so where some folks maybe were more resourced and had more support than others, and so you were very patient and very available, and I think I go back to just how amazing that was, right?
Well,
and compassionate.
I don't look at doing it. It's like I think anybody else would have done the same thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that you were the right person at the right time. I really do, Doug, because the reality is that you couldn't have the answers. There was no answers for you to have, right? We were in the midst of the unknown, and it's so, how do you tell somebody like, hey, embrace the uncertainty? Right? And you did that in such a way that it was like, I don't know what's going to happen, but we have each other. And at the end of the day, that needs to be the takeaway, right? We don't have all the answers, but we know we're going to get through it. We don't know, but we know we're strong. We know we got these folks in the community. We know we got these folks in the community. And that was the thing. I think we loved being in Haines already, but the events that occurred and the way people showed up, I think, made us fall in love with our new community even more, because you saw people who, again, in the midst of a pandemic, were feeding one another, were, people that I knew already were like very much on, we were new to, still, to be like, wait a minute, you guys are really on opposite sides here of political things, without skipping a beat, taking care of one another. And so much of that in the community, was just felt. And that, at the end of the day, what else do you have, right? You don't have it all figured out. You're trying to figure out the what to do, but knowing that, hey, we don't know. But what we do know is that we have each other, and we've got strengths here, and we're going to draw upon them. And you did a very good job of communicating that over and over, and showing your own humanity. So you gave people permission to even like right now, you gave people permission to be scared, to feel, and then take care of what they needed to take care of.
It's weird that for me, as a professional, you probably don't think this is weird, but this is still something that, we're a month short of 5 years.
Yeah.
This still hits me hard.
Yeah.
It was it was about 7 months from my last day in office before I kind of felt closer back to who I was. Because I don't think you can get... I think I was in that fight mode that whole time. Because we dealt with... Still dealing with stuff from the slide now, 5 years later. But that whole 3 years that I was mayor, every week. And for the first year and a half, it was every single day. I mean, there was so much of that going on, just trying to start the recovery process. And there's the first few months after it, I was hiding in the back of the store. I didn't want to talk to anybody.
Just trying to get
I was
respite.
making excuses, sweep floors, cut down boxes, whatever. It's like, I don't want to talk to people. Yeah. But in the job, you have to. I mean, I have to go back to the borough office, and you have to talk to people. You have to go to meetings. But man, I didn't want to talk to anybody.
I always wondered if you had ever reached out or had any other, leaders who have gone through something similar talk to you, because I can, again, this is something that's profound. And
no, not
okay.
during it. I've reached out to some people that have had stuff happen afterwards.
Yeah.
There's other incidences in Southeast and stuff, and I've reached out to those people and just like, hey, if you need somebody to talk to, I don't have solutions for you, but I know what you're going through right now. Yeah. So reached out and had those conversations with them. But no, this is something that, going in, I'd been on this Embodiment, and I had an idea what the job was for being mayor. I had no idea I was going to learn as much about trauma and geology as I did in a really short period of time.
Exactly.
Those are two things that I had. And you've been good over the last few years. Always, you'll find a good book and you're like, hey, you should read this. You should read this. Yes. And so I've done a lot of reading on it. And the latest one that you recommended a few weeks ago was Are You Mad at Me? Yeah. And the author is Meg Josephson. I'm almost done. Okay. But one of the things that has struck me about this, I don't understand the fawning thing. We can get into that if you want, but I'm not sure what all that's about. I've reread that section a couple times, and I kind of understand it. But
the trauma response. So
yeah, but the thing that really struck me was the generational trauma. That there's different groupings, indigenous peoples, stuff that say like 7 generations, that trauma can cover over 7 generations. And I've had conversations with people that, this trauma thing, everybody's overblowing it. People, it's life sucks sometimes. You just got to get with it. But then I read like 7 generations, and you go back 7 generations and the things that have happened in this world. Right. There's a lot of trauma there.
Yes.
There's a lot of trauma there. Yeah. That's carried over.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you, as somebody that deals with trauma, are you buying into that there's generational trauma that carries over from one generation to the next?
Absolutely. Because again, in different, different parts of the country, different cultures have had different, will have very profound different experiences with generational trauma. But you just look at folks who, whether they had a parent who, had a substance abuse issue and or had maybe sexual abuse in their lives, and how profound that is in their ability to attach and bond, and then they pass that down, and they pass that hurt down, and they pass that wound down, and oftentimes the person who is coming into therapy doesn't even know what wound. They know that there's a wound, right? They know that this has been part of their family of origin experience, and they might not even understand the significance of a grandparent or a great-grandparent that has, experienced trauma. But when we start to look back at it, and we start to, do the genogram, we start to look at who they, have learned things from. How again, when I go back to like that, your heart and your gut has neurons, and so does your brain, but the conditioning is all up here. So when in therapy, when we start to look at that conditioning and we start to uncover where those beliefs about who you are and how the world works, we often uncover the generational trauma. And we know that that is just stored within the body. We know that that's physiologically passed on, neurodevelopmentally, especially, for folks that have experienced sexual violence.
Mm-hmm.
So
how do you trace that back? Because, I mean, if you have a client coming in and they don't know anything about their grandparents, their great grandparents, how are you able to find that there's this trauma without, if the person doesn't really know anything that bad happened? Because we usually don't talk about that.
Right.
When we have trauma
Right.
and stuff,
Yes,
the natural
people
tendency is to hold that tight, and you don't want to share
Exactly.
that. You want to be strong. You want to
Yes.
you don't want to tell everybody
Yep.
you have a weakness or this happened. I'm not
Yep.
saying it's a weakness. I think acknowledging it and working on it is a strength.
Yeah. Well, and not too long ago that,
we
again,
didn't talk about this at all.
it. And in fact, that was even like, I'm trained to do the EMDR. And one of the, if you look at the founder of EMDR, like one of those major stories that she talks about is like how this young woman who her father actually, she was in the car when her father died. They were in an auto accident, and she didn't bring it up right away, and the doctors all around said, well, if she's not talking about it, don't talk to her about it. She goes on then to go through life and have just like difficulty in relationships with men, and difficulty. And, throughout her work in therapy and the EMDR, and then it's discovered she has these kind of felt sense, these memories or whatever. And she goes back and talks to her mom, and her mom says, yeah, you were in the car. Yeah, you were, it was your birthday. He was going to buy you or you had this candle. And, she had this kind of aversion to candles and things like that. And here's a very successful person that there's something like there's kind of a darkness, or there's something that is with her that she can't necessarily define, right? And so many times people come into therapy with a felt sense, what we call a felt sense. And so the important thing as a therapist is that you're following just the framework of like, I believe you, tell me more about it. What are we going to do about it, right? What do we think we need? And people have those answers within them. And so what you're doing in therapy is you're providing a very safe place, a very structured ways of beginning to experience that felt sense in a safe way, and it becomes revealed. And I will tell you, many times people do not have, like what we would say, like, there for a while it was all the repressed memories, right? Mm-hmm. They won't say those things, right? Now, they may start to talk to family, or they may start to put together and say, yeah, that kind of always was kind of a weird thing in our family, or there was whisperings about it, or there are these kind of things. And so people find those validation, or find that kind of truths, right? But oftentimes, once people are understanding what they're carrying in a way, they form a new relationship with what it is, the trauma that they're experiencing, and you don't necessarily need to know why. You don't necessarily need to have, but you develop this understanding of like, okay, there's this felt sense of things that I experienced. I would say in my own life, right? My mom's mom, she wanted to go to school, or she did go out to some college, but she was, this was, my parents were older when they had me, and so. And how she then, dealt with things, then is how my mother dealt with things, and certainly was unavailable in different ways, but always said, you can do whatever you want, you can be whatever you want, go to school. And you can look at that generational trauma, right? How that translated. Now, in my case, right, that translated to generational resilience. Because then you have, a parent who's saying, like, go after your dreams, go and explore these things, go and be, go after it. So we also have generational resilience too. So want to remember that.
So with that, like if we're talking 7 generations, does that compound because everybody's going to have trauma in your life. I mean, if
Right.
you don't have something happen in your life that causes some form of trauma, I don't think you're living. There's bad things that are going to happen to us.
Right.
And
right. And we can't avoid
for,
that.
For all of
ourselves,
us.
yes.
Some of them are going to be more serious than the others, but there's going to be. So if you go over 7 generations, does that compound over each generation? So the further you get along, if that's not dealt with, that it gets worse, or is it just individual?
You know,
Is there any studies on that? Or?
I wouldn't feel comfortable without, really looking at what's most up to date right now with answering that. But what I can tell you is that what I know to be true in all of the different things that I have studied, and then my own personal life, is that there is no way we would have made it this far as a human race if we didn't have resilience and love, and we didn't have right alongside that trauma experiences of connection and bonding, and so I don't think that, I would say, professionally and personally, that any of us are ever going to really be able to understand or know for certain what is held within the body. I think we just have to acknowledge it. We have to acknowledge that there is such a thing as generational trauma. And we have to acknowledge that if something were to occur, it will be passed down unless it is attended to.
So if we attend to it, the people that are dealing with things now, if they attend to it in a positive manner, we can keep that from transferring to the next generation.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Because I agree with you on the resilience thing. That I don't know if it's still okay to say this: "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." I don't know if that's correct way to phrase that, but
yes, yeah.
But I that's when we were a kid. Like rub some dirt on it, move on.
I think reminding people of their strengths.
Remind the people of their strengths that
yes,
there's bad things are going to happen. Not all of them are your doing. A lot of this is things that you can't control, and just because somebody else does something bad to you or bad things happen in your life, that's not necessarily a reflection of you, but it's usually a reflection of other people and the things that they've done. And yes, there is generational trauma, but using that as a strength, a building block to get stronger, to recognize that. Is that part of what you're trying to do when you're healing people, or when people come and talk about trauma, is like, I agree, this is something very bad, but it doesn't have to be the worst thing in your life. It can be a building block to something better and stronger.
Sure. It doesn't have to define you. Yeah. It's part of that. I believe you. Tell me more about it, right? Because oftentimes people, again, we all have different parts of ourselves, and I think that people can whether they, whatever they experienced, they can acknowledge that this happened at this time, but then they're safe again, right? And then they can have agency over their own lives. They can make choices then that are not trauma reactionary, right? They are not defined, they don't have to live a life that is defined by a traumatic experience or have this identity of their trauma then shaping the rest of their lives, right? So a big part of it is integration, right? We're teaching people to integrate that traumatic experience into their lives as a whole. And that doesn't, it means that that's part of you will always carry those, wounds in different ways. And how do we take care of ourselves whenever that part of us needs attention? But that's not all of you. That's your most alive self, is the self that is not living 24 hours in the past or 24 hours in the future. If we get it, the real reality is, and that might even speak a little bit to why my timeline, because I honestly, practice what I preach here. But if we, the reality is that 24 hours, if we go 24 hours in the past, we are oftentimes doing a depressive review of what we have experienced. And if we go too far into the future, we're doing an anxious preview of what we think may happen, right? And the reality is a lot can be revealed, and our life has multiple pathways into our future. So our most alive state, our healthiest state, is in the here and now. And that's where ultimately,
yeah, that's a challenge.
It is a challenge. It is a challenge, but that's my whole goal, as a therapist, is to get people to feel their most alive self, their most in touch with themselves, trust that internal wisdom, and then they're going to be able to tackle the things, because not everybody is as resourced, right? The reality is that not everybody has the same resources, not everybody is the same, has the same amount of nurturing, and so there, where someone can have an experience and have some trauma and then use that as a that they can use that and become stronger. Not everybody has the same resources necessarily. Yeah.
So there's a couple questions I want to ask. I got to remember them. But first, there's a lot of people out there that don't, like you're saying, don't have the resources to deal with past trauma, to acknowledge past trauma, to grow from that.
Right.
Everything costs a ton of money these days, trying to go whatever government programs or whatever. And this was something that after the slide, we had talked to you guys about this. What are things that we could do as a community that would be therapeutic for people without feeling like they're going to see a counselor, right?
Right.
The things
right.
that and I think about that quite a bit, because the frustrating thing and the really eye-opening thing for me being in that position is the amount of help that came in for the government was huge. The amount of help that came in for residents that were affected, not so much. There was a huge delta between those two on the amount of support that people got to rebuilding their lives that lost a lot, and what the borough got to and the state got to fix their infrastructure that was damaged in the thing. And so again, it goes back to what you're saying. Some had the resources. The borough got a lot of resources. We're still fixing things now. Individuals, not so much.
Yeah.
And so trying to figure out, that was a thing we were trying to figure out constantly, is where can we find help for these individuals that are in this situation. And usually what we would come up with was either there is no help or the help is 7-8 years away.
Yeah.
And there's 30 hurdles that have to be overcome to get to that 7-8 years from now. And we just look at this like, who came up with this?
Yeah.
How did somebody come up with this program and think that this was actually going to help anybody? It was mind-numbing how insane these programs were in order to qualify for them.
And which ones are you?
Brick was one of them. Building resourceful infrastructure. There's people who are affected the state gave, I think it was $16,000, the federal with the divert. So you lose your house, you get $32,000. Yeah, major losses, and that's all you can get. And it was just like, wait a second, this doesn't seem right at all.
When I first started my career, there were prevention agencies that you could go and work for. I was probably 6-8 years into my career when all of those agencies started to vanish because there's no money in it. And so the reality is that I could get on a big soapbox here
Get on the soapbox,
but we celebrate the wrong things in this country.
Yeah.
If we cared as much, and again, here I sit, with the Major League Baseball player in the family, right? So I'm, love celebrating him, but at the same time, we celebrate all the wrong things, right? Sports, celebrities getting bigger butts, whatever. I don't know. All the things we celebrate, right? We celebrate the wrong things. And so, do we have these opportunities for people? And I think things are changing because you see it in the schools now. You see it, people are talking about mental health. People are understanding that the mind-body connection, that there was never, there should be no reason why we should even be saying connection. It just is, right? We see mental health parity that also passed within my career, which means that people's I'm a standalone provider, right? So people's insurance covers mental health the same way it covers their physical health. And so it wasn't always like that. And so I think we are, I think in terms of like people's insurances and things like that, now mental health is covered where it wasn't before. That makes a difference. But
because what was it in when the 70s where we started closing a lot of these institutions? Because I think it was after One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. People were like, wait a second, how are we treating these people?
Yeah.
But am I wrong to think that maybe we shifted too far the other way? That we've got a lot of people out there that there aren't resources or there isn't follow up to help these individuals. I think you see that around the country with a number of people that are self-medicating, that there's on the homeless situation, a lot of these larger cities, that it
definitely.
For me, I think it's embarrassing as what we consider ourselves a first world country that we have people in need that aren't being taken care of, that it's gone to the depths that it has. And it's frustrating. And that's too that I look around Haines that it'll be 5 years in a month and a half from when we're recording this, that there's still roads that haven't been fixed from the slide. And so I look at the bureaucracy around this, that there's people on those roads that were deeply affected by this. And I'm thinking, 'cause it reminds me of the slide every time I drive on the roads. And I know other people that's probably the same thing. Yeah. I look at what's happening in Juneau with Suicide Basin and the floods every spring. Yeah. And I know they're moving forward. They've got agreements with the Army Corps that they're working on this. But this summer when the Army Corps said it'd be about 10 years by the time they studied it and came up with a solution to this, it's like, why does it take us 10 years?
Yeah.
You've got people this has been going on for several years, and those people are in trauma every single day. Just because the flood isn't happening, most of them are thinking about what's going on next year. Is what's going to the value of the property is going down.
Precious asset,
most
right?
precious asset.
Their biggest asset
is next year. The year we're going to lose part of our house. How do we trying to plan for the next year? That just seems totally wrong. That you're putting people in that much mental anguish, trauma, year after year after year, and that's the best we can come with. Well, about 10 years we should be able to have this. The hell?
Well,
that am I thinking about this wrong?
No, I don't think. I think the reality is that just look at how when we have someone who has a mental health crisis here, and it's not just us. It's across the lower 48 too. We hold them in jail until we can get them. Where mental health and the law come right up beside one another is when someone is at their most vulnerable, right? So here's someone who we're going to put you in jail till we can get you transported to a facility that can then assess you and hold you. Someone is their most vulnerable, right? Having their mental health crisis. And we hold them in jails, right? Now, other places, like I say, North Carolina did a fabulous job of having crisis stabilization units, right? And so the company that I worked for, they had, that was part of it. They had these crisis stabilization units to where people could be taken care of, both with the physical, what they needed for physical health. You got somebody who's on benzos and, they can't just stop those. Their mind's like a spring, right? They'll have seizures. And so there's a combination that needs to happen, right? That someone needs to be taken care of by both mental health and your docs. And so I think, the very fact that, we almost had one over in Juneau. I think, again, as we take care of how do we take care of the most vulnerable, right, in our communities? I think that's the question that many of us keep coming to these days, and we need to do a better job of it. It just comes down to that. We need to do a better job of it.
And the thing is I look at how inefficient government is. That people looking to government for the solution are looking in the wrong spot.
Yeah. And I think it's even harder for you, like native Alaskans here, for you, for your folks that are true, again, born and raised Alaskans, right, who are very used to being self-sufficient, and this is the last frontier for a reason, right? I think there's it's not this way down in the lower 48. I think that we also have to recognize that there's places that have figured this out in their communities, and we need to go and find them, and we need to talk to them, and we need to talk about how they do policing, and they do and mental health, and how they, how the local governments are taking care of. And it matters, right? That now we're talking about, like, you put together, there's fractals, patterns in nature, right? So going on a walk, just like you said, we had many talks about this. How do you like, get therapize people without them even knowing it, right? And so a lot of this is movement, and a lot of this is then connection to community, right? So if we have these areas in our community where people can come together and gather, and people can see one another, and just like, you said multiple times during the slide, right? We don't have the answers, but what we do know is that we have one another, right? There is that you do have connection, that you matter, that you're seen and you're known, and that makes all the difference in a community.
Because the hard thing is, I don't think there's anything in the borough charter that allows the borough to address this.
No.
It's very limited on the role. And that was the thing too that we found during the slide, is people were like, you need to help with this, you need help with this. And it's like, by law, we can't.
Yeah.
And so it's trying to partner with other people. It's like, okay, reaching out to different organizations that can come in and help with that. But it's the government is limited, and you look at the state and the federal government, they don't have any money. They've all blown all their money. And so it gets back to that thing that, how do we as residents come together and work on, as you were talking about other places being divided. Haines can be very divided, but as we saw during the storm event and numerous other instances, how quickly people come from different sections of the community and are working side by side when crisis hits. Are we at a crisis with mental health? How do we bring this where we get the community more involved and looking at things that help the most vulnerable, knowing that the borough doesn't really have a role other than asking for assistance from outside, trying to find funding, things like that? Do you have any ideas on, because I think the people that I know in the community that are doing the job that you are, there are some, I shouldn't say a lot, because I don't think it's more than 4 or 5 at the moment.
There's a lot of us.
There's not a lot of you, but the ones that are here, I think are good, are really good. I think for the community, and this is something that it always amazes me, that with the size of Haines, the number of people with just some stellar skill sets that are here.
It's unbelievable.
Across a lot of professions.
Yes, I
Across
agree.
a lot of professions, we've got some extremely talented individuals in the
Yes,
community.
absolutely.
Your career is one of those. We've got some amazing people with some very kind hearts and loving hearts that want to help people. How, and I'm not talking about government, how does Haines help support the job you guys are doing? How do we provide I don't know what you call it, what backup, how do we support you? How do we help with that? What are things that we can do that make this easier?
Well, you see, just, I was just in the post office, and I just saw somebody posted a flyer, right? That if you have extra food right now, that's, we're going to do some fundraisers, right? For some folks that are losing their benefits, right? And so all of a sudden, right, you see people pop up that care. And so I think we want to celebrate them. I think we want to, in a way that, promote that and get that, anytime we see that, we want to make sure that we're sharing that across our different platforms that our community uses, whether it be Facebook, whether it be, there at the post office. So I think sometimes, people will say, well, I didn't know that was happening. I didn't know that was available. And I think that's an area where we could probably do better here in the community, is just making sure that we have, people, again, maybe new to the community, all of these kind of things has the same amount of availability to what's happening.
Because that is something that people that have moved here have told me, that Haines can be kind of standoffish as well. You might be welcome in one group, but it's kind of like, okay, you moved here, we don't know if we trust you yet. We got to find out who you are before we really like, are you on this side or are you on this side? Where are your core beliefs before we're really going to accept you in the community? And some people, they feel like 6 months they're accepted. Some people can be here 20 years and they're like, one of these days I'm going to feel like a resident of Haines.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it does go both ways. I think there are times when people are welcomed with open arms, but it's like, yeah, we love having you here, but we still need to wait and see.
Yeah. And I mean, understandably, I think you're a community that has had, like I say, when we first moved here, it is, people regularly asked, well, how long do you think that you'll stay? I'm like,
what are your intentions in this
community?
What
are your intentions?
It's going for the first date when you're there.
Oh my gosh. Like,
and the dad's like, what are your intentions with my daughter this evening, young man? Are you going to have her home by 10 o'clock? Or?
Totally. And I, like I say, I joked. I was like, well, it depends on how you all act. Because, like, you're on, this is a two-way street here. We're both auditioning each other. And maybe that's why we fit here. I don't know. But I definitely think that there's, I would like to see a crisis intervention team here. Because that doesn't have to be, and maybe that's triggering a little bit within me. I have this new grandchild that I now takes up all my waking time.
Yeah, I appreciate taking this much time to talk because
exactly.
I know you're having Roger withdrawals right now, but you haven't been able to look at a picture of your grandson.
Absolutely. I get to see him in 10 days, so. But I do think that I think a great place to start would be to have a crisis intervention team in place and to get some actual training. That is So
what does a crisis intervention team look like?
Okay, so if something were to happen, major happen, like let's say something happens at the school, and we have a crisis, and let's say there's a shooting or there's something that goes on, and we know that our community members that are at the school need that additional support. And so, a crisis intervention team, and the idea is that you get people from all walks of life trained. Okay, so from people from all different areas of the community get trained. Ideally, you would have a therapist that could go, but it doesn't have to be a therapist leading because you're really following a very, very structured model of crisis intervention of stress management. It's not a processing group like you would think of like a therapy group. It's really run in these it's called the Mitchell model. And so it's and even especially for me, who's been a therapist for so long, I will have it listed right out there. So I'm making sure I'm following, right? But it's a program that's set up to manage in those first early, right away, those first early days, those first early moments, how to support people through a crisis. And so let's say something happens at the school. Well, people who are not, weren't involved in what happened, can be challenging in a small place, right? We're always going to have, just like during the slide, right? I was managing my own, I was getting some outside support from colleagues and things like that. But, we were affected as well, and then attempting to support at the same time. But ideally, right, you would have people from other parts of the community come in and run these crisis intervention debriefings to where then people could have an opportunity to talk about what was going on for them. Then they'd get resources, and then they would get connected to follow up if they need to. So again, you're providing that initial support for people.
How many people?
How many people for what?
For your crisis intervention team.
Oh boy,
I
would love to see people, I would love to see, 45, 50 people trained in it. I would love that. You get people from all walks of life again. We get people from search. Trainings can be 3 days if we get somebody in. We can get somebody, some of them will go a week, but, depends on the different trainers, depends on how long they.
Are there grants available for that?
There could be. I don't know.
Well, I'm just.
Well,
I hate just looking
States.
at things like, oh, this is out there, but follow-up's an important thing for me. It's like if something's out there that there's an opportunity
to do.
My take on everything is we need to do as much locally as we can and before looking to outside.
I think
it's like
you're right about that.
How do we take care of our community with the people that we have here?
Yeah.
How do we and during the slide we had people from Bartlett come up here.
Right.
We had a lot of outside support.
Yes.
That was absolutely wonderful.
Yep.
I'm not
Red
taking
Cross,
anything.
disaster mental health.
Yeah,
Yes.
we had a ton of people coming to the
Yes.
community from outside. I'm not saying we don't want that help,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the more people, if we can get 45 or 50 people trained in this, that's not only are we ready
amazing.
for an event like that, but I think it gets people looking at things differently,
Mm-hmm.
that maybe how they react to situations, how they react to people, maybe going through that kind of training changes that.
Yeah.
And so I think there's benefits beyond just having the training.
Yeah, I would
And
agree with
so,
that. Yeah.
so you're
I
going to
think
look at
that's a good-
grants and you're going to
so you're tasking me with this, right? I knew that was going to happen.
Well, I just, where is who would take the lead on that? Is that something that Search would be a good group to take the lead on? Would that be the
No.
borough taking the
I
lead
think
on
it would
that?
be, well, I brought it up at, the public safety board, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's a good place to go back to. So I think, you're talking.
Are you still a
I still
sitting
am.
member of
Yes,
the
I
Public
am. It's
Safety
changed.
Commission?
Yes, I still am. Yes. So I think, I think it's something that I would, I brought it up before, and I think it's something that you could revisit again. I know, Riley Hall, he and I, quick training. He's, during the slide, he and I reviewed it, and he and I ran groups of it together, and I can tell you, I know that made a difference, and so.
Oh, absolutely!
our first responders,
The quickness
Yeah.
of your guys' response and the amount of time that you guys put into that. I don't think a lot of people in the community know how vital that was. It was, yeah.
It was an honor. Yeah.
A lot of great people showed up.
Yep. I agree.
So how do you, your specialty, trauma, PTSD, grief, how do you talk to people about that in your life, in your business? That seems, that's 75% of your practice right there. At least, I don't know how many, because you also do relationships.
Right.
But not how do you let that just kind of go through and not take any of that? For me, I think I would just carry a lot of that with me.
Yeah.
And it always amazes me, people like you that are doing this work, and at the end of the day, I would just be broke.
Oh.
How do you do that?
Well, I think each one of us have different gifts. I will go back to, I had amazing mentors early on in my career. I had amazing, a couple amazing professors during grad school, but more importantly, I really had some amazing mentors early on in my career who basically said, if you want to be in this for the long haul, it's not if you burn out, it's when you burn out. So here are some things to do. And some of the, a couple of these folks were nearing the end of their career. So this information was just invaluable. So the very tangible things I do is I pay attention to my schedule. I practice what I preach. So I am regularly spending time, doing mindfulness. I'm regularly spending time with the somatic and energetic work. I'm paying attention to my own energetic state. And I teach people something called, you clear your energetic state. And I could start to talk to this and your eyes are going to glaze over. You're going to think I go really woo-woo here, but it's not. There's a science behind this. I could also tell you where to go buy, $60,000 crystals, and you don't need to do that. But we do need to clear our energetic states. We do need to recognize what belongs to us and what belongs to other people. And, at the end of the day, my job is to come alongside someone. Someone doesn't heal when we take their pain from them. Now there's times where we say, I'm going to lift this with you. Sure, absolutely. I'm going to help you carry this. But it is yours to process. It's yours to heal from, right? So at the end, what I'm doing all day long is supporting people as they heal, right? As their so that's a beautiful thing. At the end of the day, people always think like, like how do you talk to people all day long or these kind of things? It's like, are you kidding? That's an honor. It's an honor to be with someone during the process of their healing, the process that they are each day, this is getting a little lighter, hopefully, right? Each day, they're beginning to know who they are and lead with their strengths versus with the wounds, right? So it's different for us, right? Each day that we show up, and like I told that story earlier, I realized, early on, at a time in my life where my mind could have snapped for sure. We didn't get into it, but there was, of course, lots of other stressors. Anytime there's a trauma, the things in your life that are already fractured are gonna have an even harder time, right?
Yep.
So, and all those things are gonna surface. The things that all those what they say is like what's gonna spill out, right, is what's waiting right there. So, so there were a lot of stressors when Addison was in the NICU, and like I say, this just loving, wonderful professional person came into my life, and so I've had these real life experiences and people who have taught me how to show up for myself and for others. So
something while you were talking about that of with helping carry. You can correct me if I get this wrong, but it's stuck with me ever since the slide that you guys had told us that joy shared is joy doubled, grief shared is grief halved.
Yeah. Yep.
And so but it's hard sometimes to share the trauma and the grief.
Yeah, it is. Oh, it's huge, right? You want to fix things for people. You want to we're all conditioned. Like, tell someone it's okay. You can have another child. It's okay. You can get another house. It's okay. You have this, but you have this, right? We want to talk people out of their pain. And like I shared with you, there's amazing Megan Devine, right, who does all who's just amazing grief researcher and practitioner, very much talks about like that. It is radical to actually sit with someone else and not try to take their pain away. But that's what people need. People need to be acknowledged. And that's where the I believe you, tell me more about it. What do you think you'll do about this? Right? So you're not taking away. You're sitting there and saying, I see you. I'm not going to run. Your pain might be making me uncomfortable, but I'm going to sit right here. And you teach people, then people resource. They find their strengths again. And people are strong. People have resilience. If not, we'd all come apart years ago, right? Generations ago.
Well, some of us have come apart.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Sometimes it takes a lot of super glue to put us back together, but
So
when you talked about faith being renewed with Addison. Do you think that's a big part of your practice now? Not that you're prophesizing to people and everything,
yes,
but
I don't do Christian counseling.
No,
yeah,
but just I look at the work you're doing and helping others, and I think there is a faith element to that you're helping and giving of yourself to others. Do you see it that way still? Or?
I do absolutely. I mean, again, I think maybe growing up Catholic, there's something very private about in some ways, and I'm also there was some times to where I'm probably more cautious to this idea of like forcing your religion on anybody, because I'm far more I should say skeptical, or even have a strong dislike of organized religion in many ways, right? And so I'm very respectful about people's spirituality and how people, I don't necessarily, hold to the fact that each person has to, speak about God in the same exact way, but people talk about a life force. People talk about a knowing of a connection, whether it be God, the universe, of this understanding of a source of creation. And if you talk to most people, right, they have some understanding of that in their lives. And so for me, of course, I do believe that God has me in this role, and when He no longer thinks that I'm fit for it, I will no longer be doing it. But and so I think that the people who come across, right, I've heard a pastor say one time that, if you go through life like you have one of those pass keys for like that, like at a hotel, right, and it's not going to open every door, but the doors that it is going to open, then you walk through, right, and so. I very much believe that, whether it be God or the universe or however folks find one another, that the people who need me are going to find me, and the people I need, I'm going to find. And I believe that's love. And I don't think that we would have gotten where we are as a species. We would have died out, I think, a long time ago if we didn't have that, right? So I hope that answered your question. Do I?
It did.
Yeah.
It did, because this is something I've struggled with for a while, because I've always felt called to Christianity and God and everything, but I my experiences are always so much different than other people, and so it's like, okay, am I not worthy? Am I not? Where's that land? And there's been numerous instances lately that I'm like, okay, maybe I'm being called this way, but kind of like you, the organized religion part is hard.
Yeah.
Because you look, as a history major, I look back through history and you see the number of, and it's still happening today, the number of deaths because somebody believes in a different religion.
Right.
You know, it's just ongoing, and it makes it hard to trust organized religion or trust churches, and I don't want to go into it with that. I'm still looking for a connection, but there's these barriers to. So I kind of practice my own kind of thing and learn on my own, but there's something to be said for that fellowship of being in a church with fellow believers and having that sense of unity in a way that's very appealing and very strong.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so I'm just trying to.
Yeah.
As old as I am, I'm hoping I figured out one of these days. But it's just trying to figure out where all that adds up at, and it's a lot of reading, a lot of conversation with people, and trying to figure it out.
I have a colleague, and we've discussed many times, who's a Christian as well, and we're just like, well, I don't know why God gave it to the Buddhists. I don't know why that this is, but good. Let's use it. This is not, this isn't, we can't explain these things, and we know that we find love, right? And I think that's the whole Bible. Let's just love one another, right? So this idea of, like, if you're finding love, then how is that, if you're finding that connection and you're finding that bond, and you know it when it's real, right? You know when you're really connecting in a humanitarian way.
And the other part that stresses me is the judgment aspect, that my reading is that love our neighbors, and the judgment will be God's. Yeah. But we spend a lot, and I'm not immune. I judge people all the time. Yeah. It's kind of that human nature. We're judging everybody else around us, and oftentimes not looking at what we're doing ourselves.
Well, I always tell people our brain is hardwired for survival, not happiness, and because it's hardwired for survival, we confuse good judgment with judgmental. And so it is important that we have good judgment about lettuce that's going to give you diarrhea and a person that's going to beat you, right?
Yes.
So like these things are like, you want to have good judgment about the character or about the safety of other humans, for sure. And oftentimes we'll confuse that, or we'll tell ourselves, well, don't, you're pulling away from someone. You don't know that yet. You don't know that person yet. Well, boy, your heart and your gut has neurons again, So we have a felt sense of safety, and oftentimes we override that, and then all of a sudden, then you're working for a narcissist, or then all of a sudden, then you're in a relationship with somebody who is not actually, there to be loving and supportive, and so. I always tell people, like, let's be really cautious here with those two things. And because, sure, each one of us can get judgmental, and we know that, right? We know when we're in that space of, like, and it's usually fear-based, right? We're fearing something. We're fearing the loss of something, or we're fearing something that's going to happen. The unknown.
And I think people prey on that, too.
What do you mean?
That you look at, Andrew Cremata and I were talking about this a few weeks ago, that there's all the organizations out there, that all these political buttons. There's people on both sides that are playing to that fear
Oh, sure.
to raise money and so there's,
Yeah.
I look at so many issues in Haines and the state and federal that they don't want to solve it. There's issues that people don't want to solve because they can manipulate that fear of the other person or the other position into whatever gains that they're getting.
Yeah.
And that keeps us, that ability to use that fear on the judgment aspect of it or whatever, is being abused by a lot of people, I think, in a lot of organizations. Because we're taught to fear somebody that thinks differently rather than sit down and have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
And there are some people that you should be fearful of.
Right.
I mean,
right,
he's dead now,
exactly.
but Ted Bundy, I would not.
Right,
I would not have
exactly.
a female member of my family go out on a
Right.
date with Ted Bundy.
There you go.
I think that's
there you go. There are people.
There are some
yes,
people that you
yes.
just say no.
Yes, and there are sociopaths that don't have bloodlust that
That
aren't going
don't
to
have
kill
blood.
you, but
Yeah,
they are
they're
still going to
still
wreak havoc.
Still going to wreak havoc in your
yeah.
life.
Yeah, still going to harm you.
But I think just because somebody has a different political opinion doesn't mean that you should stop
Yeah.
conversing
No.
with them and having a sit down conversation.
Right.
And that's,
Right.
I see that a lot in
Yeah.
our country right now, that I don't think social media is helping with that at
No.
all. They're kind of siloing
all.
everybody.
And again, that puts us back into that survival mode, which is that black and white.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is that we are complex. Most things
There's
are
a lot
are
of shades of
and.
gray.
And that multiple truths can exist at once,
Yep.
right? You can truly say, I respect this person. Our beliefs are absolutely, like our spiritual
Mm-hmm.
beliefs are not aligned at all. And I have so much respect for this person. This person is a kind person. This person, multiple things, multiple truths can exist at the same time. That's how complex we are, right? We are so complex that we can have multiple emotions, right? Oftentimes, sometimes they're congruent, sometimes they're not. The scientists that really studied this, our emotions last 90 seconds. 90
What?
seconds, yeah, 90 seconds. So if you
Get out. No.
yes, if you let something just pass through you, humans are the only ones that turn around and make meaning and then keep going with an affect state. We hold on
Okay.
to that. So if you,
Because I was going to say, I've had emotions that have lost longer than 90 seconds, but that's my own fault.
Well, and it's because and I wouldn't use the word fault, I would say human, but
Yeah.
you have to do something to keep it going. You have to believe, you have to continue to upset yourself or continue to make yourself joyful, right?
Mm-hmm.
So both can be true, right? We can keep a joyful affect state. There's a good app. It's called How We Feel. And I recommend this to all my clients to start using this. And what it first has you do is just start to pay attention to yourself, like your energy. Am I high energy pleasant or high energy unpleasant? Am I low energy pleasant or low energy unpleasant? And with each of those realms, then you can check. You can look and see what affect state. And many times, if people are honest with themselves, yeah, they might be in one of these quadrants, but they're feeling multiple things, right? I might be. What's the difference between, being lonely and worried, right? When people are like, well, I don't really know. Let me, find that out about myself. Well, I can be both grateful and angry about something at the same time. When people really start to dial in, that we are rarely just one thing. The only time we are just one thing, just one affect state or experiencing, right? Humans aren't, humans experience affect state. So you're a human experiencing anxiety, or you're a human experiencing joy. But when people really, only in survival are we really just that black and white. And what's happening now is people's fear is kicking them into survival. Right, that fear of the unknown, or the fear that somehow their community member is out to, because if they hold a different belief, is out to harm them. When in reality, if you saw that same community member, who about to freeze to death or something on the side of the road, you'd stop, right? You would not. All of a sudden, that fear would go away. So when people really ask themselves, like, what would it take to get that fear down? What would it take for me to stop fearing the folks that I see, waving this flag or waving that flag, right? Most people say, nothing, right? Those people are just idiots, right? I wouldn't have anything to do with that idiot, right? Like, really? You're a really nice person. So that idiot that person you just said is an idiot is their wood stoves on fire, right? Their chimneys on fire. You're going to step back and be like, oh, no. The reality is that, a few people would be sure there, you might find some folks, but the reality is no, people are ultimately, are going to have that sense of that person has value, that person has worth, right? So you're right. Social media, all of a sudden, that can be hid behind and things like that. But I don't know where we got off on that.
The trail goes all sorts of different directions when you sit down to talk with me, Cesre. I figured you knew that before you showed up here. This could go.
I was kind of worried about it, though. I was like, what are we going to talk about?
A bunch of different directions here.
I guess so.
So, are there any things in your practice that kind of keep you laying awake at night? That how are we gonna solve this? How are we gonna move forward with this? What are the things that concern you? If maybe we've already talked about them, but what are things you see on the horizon that we should try and get in front of?
Well, I think part of my temperament very much is that sense of and belief. My belief system is like again, we're going to find one another, who the people that need us the most. But I certainly have concerns for communities and people being more and more divided, pulling farther and farther away from one another, and then teaching that as again, that they're going to people are going to continue to operate in that very, again, fear-based of I have to fear my neighbor, when in reality we have far more in common, and people are far more alike. If we just take that first step to, just, again, you don't have to be best friends with somebody or anything like that, but I worked at, in my undergrad, right, when I was getting ready to graduate there in Colorado Springs, I had to do an internship, and I worked for an organization called Food for Thought Gatherings. And because Colorado Springs was so divided, what this nonprofit did was they put together people in the community from all walks of life, and they had us, back in the day, it was before the internet, so they had us, we were on index cards putting people's names up, and they put them together to have dinner together. And that's all they did. That was all this nonprofit did. It was called Food for Thought Gatherings. And again, like I say, my life experience.
Okay, but how? I like the idea.
Yeah, and I don't know what the research. I don't know how.
I was going to say, how did they pick? And people, I mean, how did they know these people are so much different? They might have been Ted and Bill were like best buds once they got to know each other, and they didn't. They're like, sweet, somebody bought us dinner.
I think that they were doing some. I think you had to do some interviews, right? You had to call people up and give them some specific surveys. I can't remember what they were at the time, but that was one of the things. You just knew some people, somehow, some way they had some information on people. It was pretty known. Again, you have focus on the family in that community, and then you have some nonprofits that are specifically working opposite of focus on the family. And so I think that the idea was, and like I say, when I worked for them, they were just starting out, so I would love to go back, I guess, and see. I don't know how they ended up quantifying if it made a difference in the community, but how could it not, right? Mm-hmm. So here you have just this one nonprofit that is developed just to get people to eat together. That's it. They didn't do anything else other than that. Get people from different walks of life to sit down and have a meal together. I think,
Seems like a good way to start.
Seems like a good way to start. Yeah. I wonder if we could do that here.
So the interesting thing for me when you're talking about that, when there's a fundraiser dinner, people from all walks of life, sometimes they're sitting at the same table, so it kind of happens organically here.
Does. Yes, I agree.
But it's always when there's a crisis or something bad that all of a sudden you'll have people come and support in the same family or the same group or what have you, and a lot of people with different opinions can sit down at the same, but I don't think I think it's more of for a lot of people that okay, well, we're stuck. They sat at the same table. We'll probably have. They're not talking about politics.
They're
They're not talking about. They're just.
Not a.
But I think it's a
specific.
good start that you're
Yeah.
just sitting with somebody that might have different beliefs and sitting
Yeah.
across the table and having
Yeah.
that conversation. And the thing
Sharing
is,
the same space.
most people recognize that. People I have conversations
yeah.
with. People are like, yeah, we're divided, but when
Oh,
it hits a fan, everybody steps up. Everybody comes together.
Yeah, I think it's
And-
something that people are proud of here.
Absolutely.
As a new, when that was one of the first things that we heard, right? And then saw it, and and so
But I don't know why we can't come together and still be nicer to people in the rest of the time.
exactly.
Because that's
Yeah.
experiencing a life here and having that the whole time of just you can have
Just-
do your parents know who you're out to dinner with?
Yeah.
Do your parents? And it's like, seriously, really? I'm like 40 years old. I love my
Well,
parents, but I think they respect my decision making these
Yeah.
days. That I don't really need to run my dinner companions past my mom and dad.
And people thinking like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen if somebody sees me? Who am I going to get told off? Am I now going to not?
That's why I stay
is someone
home.
now not going to
I'm at
rent
the-
to me? Is someone
I'm at the
now,
store and I go home.
Yeah, I mean, so it matters, right? It matters that we pay attention to whatever that fear is, right? So what do people think is going to happen? Will they not get a job? Will they not get asked to to participate in things that are important to them? Are they no longer going to be able to go and have access to something, right? And so I think that it does matter, that there's different things. I hate to say, like, there's what we don't want, being somebody who is, like I said, we have a history, we have a rich history of where we lived before here that we're very proud of, right? So so again, not to take away anything from us that are not locals, right? But we live here, right? And we want to care about Haines just as much as a local does. So I think there does need to be some language around, like, how folks that come here that care and want to get invested in their community, and maybe doing something right off the bat, like a welcome packet or something like that. How do we welcome new people in, so they have an understanding of, like, yeah, your history is invited to be here. You're going to get access to the same things even if you're not a local. That is a challenge that every small community, right? Eddie and I could go back to our hometown, and there are opportunities available to us because we grew up there, right? That are, maybe will
without a
always
doubt.
be there, right? Because people trust and know each other. But how do we get that trust started, quicker maybe here?
Yeah.
That would be sort of nice, I think.
So thinking about that, and you had mentioned before we started, I don't want to keep you much longer here, but
Okay.
you had talked about maybe doing a mindfulness exercise.
Oh, yeah.
What
Go ahead.
what did you have in mind here? And what explain a mindfulness exercise?
Well, I brought a couple different things. So
Okay.
there's a somatic awareness, right? So I practice a lot of that somatic awareness to get people, like, in touch again with your what you are experiencing, so you can again then meet your needs, so you can know yourself. And then I also have something that is good for, like, a grounding technique. So we could do one or both of those.
Let's try both.
You want to try both? Okay.
Let's try both of them.
Okay.
So
First we'll do the somatic experiencing. We'll do the body scan. Okay. And I'm
Okay,
going
and this
to,
is for-
and this is
this is-
okay. So this is somatic awareness. Now, what somatic awareness means is that you are going to be in touch with your affect states. You're going to be in touch with what you're physically experiencing. You're going to be in touch with your emotions, and you're going to be in touch with your thinking. So the more you know yourself, right, the more aware of yourself, the more embodied you are, the more you will stay grounded, and you will stay out of that survival black or white thinking.
okay.
So we could do this.
All right.
It's a self-awareness, right? So this is self-awareness.
So am I verbally answering questions, or is this
how
just?
do we want to?
Or am I just-
I don't
Can I-
know.
can
Do
I
you
just
want to?
internalize
I'm
this?
gonna. No, you haven't signed any. There's
I-
no
I-
treatment going on
This
here.
is
I
no
wanna,
treatment going on. This
yeah.
is just test
I
purposes.
just wanna say that here, that you are not being treated.
I am not being treated.
And I am in no way responsible for your health,
that's
other than
pretty
as
much
a
what
friend.
that's
As a
what
friend,
everybody
I'm
says.
so responsible. Yeah.
We're in no way responsible for what Doug does
No
from
way.
here on
No
forward.
way. And what I can do is just
How many pages you got there?
well,
How long
it
is this
goes
gonna
kind of
take?
quick. It goes kind of
Okay,
quick.
it goes quick.
I can do an example of you connecting with your internal signals. So connecting with, I guess it's up to you how much you want to explore yourself right now.
I never want to explore
You never want to
myself,
explore yourself?
but let's do one of them,
Let's
and
do one of them?
we'll
Okay.
see where we go from there.
Okay.
How long this is going to be?
Well,
Marty's getting a
how
kick
about-
out of this.
Right. How about for the purposes of this? Because it could, you could have a very, again, intimate or vulnerable experience that you could always talk to me about later, right? So, but how about for this purposes, I won't ask you to answer out loud. I'll just have you'll just answer you'll just follow my direction.
I'll just follow your direction.
But not out loud.
I'll answer in my mind.
You'll answer in your mind, yeah.
Okay.
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 All right.
You
Because
got
this
me-
is something that anybody can do. And what I do is I have people people start this practice of like trying to break. People walk around mindless, right? And so not everybody, no one walks around fully regulated all the time. But the idea is to know whenever you are dysregulated, right? So the more you know yourself, the more you're going to know, wait a minute, I'm outside of my window of tolerance. I'm either, too low or I'm too, have too much energy, right? And so then people can upshift or downshift.
Okay.
So the idea is the more often that we are being mindful, right, then we're going to have access to our most present self, our most embodied self that knows what our current needs are. Okay.
Yeah, this and the reason I'm hesitant on this is
Okay.
for me being present in the moment is really difficult because
We don't have to do
I want to be
this.
doing no I want to we're gonna do it. It's just I'm just
You think he wants to
explaining.
do this?
I'm just explaining. It's just normally I'm just it's like okay I need to be doing something to be
So
thinking
keep
about
yourself
myself and sitting there
is
an uncomfortable situation. So that's
can you visualize? Can you if I say think of a sunset? Can you visualize a sunset in your mind?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. I just want to know.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah,
All right.
good, okay.
On that level, let's go.
On that level?
I passed
You're
the
gonna go
first.
for it? You
I
passed
passed
the
the
first
first
one?
one,
Okay.
so let's go.
Okay. This is going to be funny because we're friends here, but you've been to my office, you know how comforting it is. So
Yes,
All
very
right.
comforting.
I invite you to close your eyes, scan your body, notice what physical sensations are present, notice what areas are comfortable and what areas are other than comfortable.
So do you want me to tell you?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope, you're going to keep all this. And all you have to do, I promise you, I'm going to keep us going here, so you don't have to. All you have to do is just listen to me. I'll tell you when we're done, too. Turn your awareness to the areas that are other than comfortable. Notice what sensations tell you this is other than comfort. Too hot, too cold. Is there too much pressure or tightness? Or is there pain? And if there is pain, notice the quality of the pain. Sharp, dull, constant, or does it come and go? Knowing you don't have to do anything about this, just notice what's there. And now turning your awareness to the areas that are comfortable or at least neutral. Notice what sensations tell you that this is comfort or neutrality. Noticing the temperature, how light or dense each area might be, how loose or firm your muscles are, how relaxed each area is. Just taking a moment, enjoy your more comfortable sensations. And now I invite you to turn your awareness to your emotions, noticing what emotions are present, noticing if you're experiencing more than one emotion, and if you experience more than one emotion, notice if they are similar or congruent, or if they are opposite or other than congruent. Again, knowing you don't have to do anything about them, just notice what you're experiencing. And now turning your awareness to your thinking, you can notice what you're thinking, and more importantly, notice the quality of your thoughts. Are they fast or slow or evenly paced? Do they dart around or are they still? And noticing if they're about your past or future, or are your thoughts right here in present time. Again, knowing you don't have to do anything about them, just notice what you're experiencing. And when you feel ready, you can bring your awareness back into the room and open your eyes. Feel embodied? Do you feel like can you identify your core? Like, can you identify the core? Sometimes people recognize their core around their heart or along their spine. But the idea is you just kind of drop down and are present with yourself.
I felt very present with myself during there.
Yeah?
And when you're talking about was my mind going forward or back, it seemed like it was very present the whole time.
Present.
And that's unusual.
Yeah?
That if I'm not talking or doing, that's weird that I was able to do that.
I think it's awesome.
So
this is a practice. It takes time. Like, and I always tell people, like, you do this automatically because, like, most people know what it's like to walk into a library or a church, right? And you can meet, a friend outside, or you can be rushed or whatever. And as soon as you hit that library door, you downshift a few, right? Because you're like, okay, I have a goal. My goal is to come into this quiet space. So I'm going to then downshift. So then my physical presence, my mind is prepared. I match my goal. And so at the end of the day, that's what self-awareness is all about, is that you can recognize your, where you're at, you can recognize your needs, and you can also then upshift or downshift to match whatever goal you're about to go into, right? Because if I was to sit and I was to do this, big old relaxation and then come in here and talk to you guys, right? And be all, I'd probably forget a bunch of things, right? So that wouldn't really necessarily meet the goal, right? So you also want to know, like, again, here, I'm going to know myself well enough to then know, like, oh, my energetic state is just hovering here. I need to upshift it because my next goal is that I'm going to give a presentation, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to go and get this done. Or boy, I have a lot of energy, so I need to do an over energy correction to come down. But this again, self-awareness is about mindfulness. So you're looking at the qualities, not making meaning, not the stories we tell ourselves, because as humans, we're the only ones, right? That you look at animals who have just been chased by something, right? They shake it off and then they go back to grazing, right? And then they're going to do it all over again if they need to, right? We're the only ones that would be like, is that going to come back? Is that going to get me? Do I need a fence? What do I need to do? Right? I watch Frank. He will run off a bear, and he will then, he'll bite his stuffy a few times hard, and then he'll fall asleep. And
Frank Cesre's dog,
Yes,
just for everybody that's
Frank's dog,
wondering
yeah.
who this Frank is. Figured we should probably clarify.
Family member that bites his stuffy. No.
We got a family member
Right.
that runs off bears and comes back and bites his stuffy.
Right.
It's your dog,
No,
Frank.
it's totally Frank. But no, so again, humans are the only ones that sit there and make meaning, right? This is that whole, our emotions only last 90 seconds. And then we make meaning out of things. We tell ourselves these stories. And so we want to be careful, and we want to know what I'm really continuing again with all these conditioning here to keep this affect state going, or keep myself in this affect state. So, so the more we drop into this, the more embodied we are. So what you want to do is you just want to notice. The other reason why this is really good too is it can teach you. We use this for pain management for people, and a lot of trauma. People who have untreated trauma have a lot of pain, so they are used to, like, their bodies will hurt, right? Whether, again, they'll have headaches, they'll have backaches, they'll have stomach issues. We know autoimmune, right? We know autoimmunes are tied with trauma. So one of the things about this is that we're also, whenever you're pendulating between what's comfortable or what's uncomfortable and with what's comfortable or neutral, you're also teaching your pathways then to find both, that there can be those areas at the same time, right? And so it knocks down pain when you go back, when you pendulate between areas of discomfort and areas of comfort or neutrality.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is this something that, since this is you can pretty much do this on your own?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so there's some this throughout the day or whenever, if you're feeling stress or feeling kind of just
people
settle.
should do it throughout the day. Just settle,
whatever is happening.
Yep.
A couple times a day, just kind of just do a quick check-in. And
when people first come in, we're having them do it 3 or 4 times.
Okay.
So a lot of this is some stuff that comes out. So EMDR, which is your eye movement, right? The trauma reprocessing. It's 8 stages, and people always think that this is the only part of EMDR. But the first part of EMDR is the somatic experiencing, and that's that. You got to be able to be embodied. You got to be able to experience yourself. And so that's why we want to look at the qualities, not what it means that your thoughts are racing, just that your thoughts are racing, right? Or that your thoughts are still, not what it means because your thoughts are still. And then again, I'm experiencing, joy and nervousness, right? Not why am I experiencing it, but that you just are. So again, you're looking at the qualities, and we really mean it when we say you don't have to do anything about it. That's the key right there, is to get into those moments of like, I don't have to do anything about this. Because the reality is I'm complex, and I'm going to be going through a lot of different emotions, a lot of different times, a lot of different reasons. You want to do one more? That's a support one.
Okay, sure. Was this or was there? Yeah, let's do another one.
Let's do another one. Okay. This one right here is just one that
do I close my eyes again?
Yep, you're going to close your eyes with this one. And this one is one of these things, and this is again why I think I brought it with me. Hold on, let's see. The other thing too is, I guess, the reason, let me explain this for the mindfulness too, is that we need to know when we jump out of our, whenever we're stressed or whenever we're anxious, we jump out of our core self, right? And all of a sudden we'll be across the room. That's why people will always say, like, I got introduced to somebody and I have no idea what their name is. It's like, well, because you weren't grounded, right? You weren't in your core. So the more often you're practicing this mindfulness, the less likely it is that you're going to jump out. Your energetic state is going to jump out across the room, and people disassociate, right, on all levels. And people
so the fact
just
that I can't remember people's names is the fact that
you get nervous at the point. Yeah, you're not embodied. Yeah.
Get out of here.
No, it's so true. So true.
What?
Yeah, so true.
It's not that my mind is. I have a terrible memory.
No. Okay. Now, this is called Support in the Chair. Oh, no. Well, and so this is another book I was going to recommend to you. Dr. Ellen Langer, she writes, she's 50 years of experience at Harvard. She does all the research on like the placebo effect and how we need to believe that there's a reason why, that we get better with the way we think, basically. And so she's a pioneer in the the mindfulness movement and things like that. But that's another book that.
Okay, what's the name of the book?
The Mindful Body. Dr. Ellen Langer is her name. So
okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay.
So this is one that you can do too whenever you're feeling stressed. All right. I invite you to close your eyes, checking the bottoms of your feet. Notice how they're connected to the floor. Feel the floor supporting your feet, holding them in place. Notice how no effort on your part is required to be supported by the floor. Now turning your awareness to your legs and sit bones. Notice how they connect to the surface beneath you. Feel how this surface holds you in place. feeling the support of this surface, knowing you are not required to do anything to receive this support. It is just there for you. And turning your awareness to your back, noticing how the surface behind you connects to your back, how it holds you in place, just enjoying your support. And feeling your arms being held in place by the surface beneath them, noticing the support, how it takes no effort on your part to receive this support. And noticing overall how your feet are held in place by the floor beneath them, how your legs and your sit bones are supported by the surface beneath them, how your back is supported by the surface behind you. Again, noticing how you don't have to do anything to receive this support. It's just there for you. Taking a moment to enjoy. And when you feel ready, you can bring your awareness back into the room and open your eyes. What'd you notice?
The calming effect towards the longer it goes on, just kind of, I just feel calmer.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't feel like I didn't feel like I was super energized beforehand. I thought I was fairly calm, but just listening to that and just accepting the different things, it just kind of felt my heartbeat kind of slowing a little bit and just kind of relaxing.
Nice.
So
Regulate that nervous system.
Yeah.
That's what that is. And that's one of those, and that's an easy one. You know, that's something in the middle of our day. We can just stop and take a moment and recognize the support beneath us. That we don't have to do anything to deserve it. I think that's the other really big part, is that, you know, just recognize so much of our society is just bent on, like, our worth is tied to what we've done or what we're doing
absolutely.
or what we can produce, right?
What we have.
What we have, yes. And so oftentimes recognizing that there is something there for us just because we're us, just for us. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing those.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. I thought that was a good place to end.
Yeah. That is a good place to end.
Yeah, I think so too.
Well, thank you, Cesre, for joining us. I know you were nervous about doing this.
I was so nervous about doing this.
But I think you've done great.
Thank you.
It's been awesome having this conversation. I've learned a lot about you and about what you do and the trauma. I'm still learning about trauma.
Yeah. Me too.
How our mind works and ways that we can move forward with that. I've always appreciated yours and Eddie's friendship since I first met you guys when you got to town. And so thank you for joining me and trusting me to have this conversation and record it and share it with other people.
Well, thank you for having me.
And you know that whatever you do going forward, you've got a big supporter in me and happy to help you with whatever you do.
Thank you. You've re-energized me. I do think that I could do more for the community, so I do.
I didn't mean to do that.
No,
I think you do a lot already.
I should say you've re-energized a passion that I already have. There's something that I already want to be doing. I think having a crisis intervention team and having some more mobile crisis kind of response is something that is important to me, and I think that would be important to our community. So
as you move forward with that, let me know how I can assist.
Thank you.
I would be honored if I could be one of the members of that.
I think you'd be great.
I would love to be a part of that.
Yeah, I think you'd be great.
All right. Well, say hi to Roger in 10 days.
I can't wait. Yeah.
Thank you, Cesre.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching this episode of Doug Has Questions. Just a reminder, if you've enjoyed the conversation today, please like, subscribe. We're available on YouTube if you want to watch us. If you just want to listen, it's on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And you have new episodes being launched every Thursday. So thanks again for watching or listening and following us. We appreciate your support.